at 6:05. Okay, we're starting the meeting at 6:05. Mary, for your information, all the council members are here. We have some guests with us. That would be Tom Murphy and David Shapak. Law enforcement here is J.D. Comer and Sheriff Matt Kendall. And we have Paul Douglas here. That's how I see at the moment. Okay, Mary?
Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's begin. Calling the meeting to order. We have our resolution authorizing teleconference meetings. Let me have somebody make a motion to the resolution of the Gualala Municipal Advisory Council authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the Gualala Municipal Advisory Council pursuant to the Ralph M. Brown Act.
I'll make that motion.
Melissa makes the motion. A second?
Dan second.
Dan second. Okay, thanks. Let's vote on that. Melissa?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And Robert? Aye. Okay, you got that, Mary?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Introductions and announcements. I'll make a quick announcement. Welcome, everyone. 2023 is here, marked by a stormy, tumultuous beginning. I hope everyone is doing well after some of the most irregular, unprecedented, and significant winter weather I have witnessed during my 37 years in Gualala. So I just thought if there anybody else want to make an announcement or share any experiences with us, you're welcome to at this point. Otherwise, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda.
I want to make a comment to Mary. I'm house cleaning and I have a laptop that's not terribly old that I'm nearly desperate to get rid of because I just don't use it. It works, but I don't use it. If you'd like it, let me know.
Oh, I would love it. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
give me a I'll
Any other
forget.
Okay, good, Melissa. Melissa and
We'll
Mary will get together on that.
Yeah, via email and work out when I can pick it up.
Okay,
Thank you, Melissa. That's most kind.
Okay.
you're welcome.
Any other announcements or introductions needed? Okay. Then let's go on with our consent agenda. We have the approval of the minutes from December 1st. Anybody want to make a motion to approve or disapprove those meeting minutes?
Robert, Kevin
Yes.
Evans will move approval of the December 1st minutes.
All righty, thanks, Kevin. A second on that?
Dan, I'll second it.
Dan, okay, thanks, Dan. Do a voice vote on that. Melissa,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and Robert. Aye. Okay. Correspondence, if any. Mary, any CDP correspondence or any kind of correspondence?
Just that bill from Mendocino Coast Network, the statement of annual website and domain host fee for $179.40.
Yeah.
That's the second one we have received regarding that, and I do believe that it has been discussed, but that was the second billing.
And okay, and it still hasn't been, I still haven't requested for the county to pay that, and we agreed, I think, Don, to pay that, and then there's going to be some reimbursement that comes back to us from MCN, I believe. So the treasurer or I will be doing that. Okay, we've got to get that paid. So I'll get going with the county on that, or whoever is going to be the treasurer or whatever we decide there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, so otherwise nothing else other than that that's been pending for a while, right?
No, I've received no CDPs, even though there are two at the bottom of this, which you pointed out were on the county website, but we have not received an official mailing regarding those two. One is a use permit and the other is a coastal development permit.
Okay, we'll discuss that a little further when we get down to that part of the agenda. All righty.
Very well.
Under approval of agenda, we have some edits we want to make, I believe. Mary, you emailed me about a change to the agenda regarding writing a letter to Supervisor Williams about the closing of the Point Arena Food Bank at the Senior Center and moving it to Ukiah. Mary has requested that that be on the agenda, and we put that down under new business.
Yes, it leaves hundreds of people and families without a food resource here or a backup in emergencies that we just went through, all of this rain and everything. And the county needs to know that the coastal community needs the food bank to stay here. And I was thinking maybe Supervisor Williams could do something about that, because that only needs 2 food banks, one in Gualala and one in Fort Bragg, and that's it. And hundreds of people and families are going to go without a food source.
Understand.
And will
So let's
be hitting the church.
So let's add it under the new business items, and so we can discuss it further, Mary. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
So we'll put that, I guess,
Yeah.
new business. We have G, new business 1. Okay, right below those 2 items that we have there. Under, okay, it'd be item number 3 then, under new business. When I was on the website of the county building and planning department, I noticed a couple other CDPs that I think we should add to the agenda under 8, permit review assignments. And I'm just going to say them real quick, if you all agree with that. Number 3 and number 4. Number 3 would be CDP 2022-0041, Beer Ensign. And then number 4 would be CDP 2022-0035, Beeler, Mike and Kevin. So I'd like to see those added under the 2 that we have under number 8, 3 and 4, if everybody's okay with that. So that'd be a slight change. Anything else on the agenda that we need to amend? Okay, then can we entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Dan.
Okay, Dan, thanks. A second?
I'll second, Henry.
Henry seconds. Okay, let's take a voice vote on that. Melissa?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And Robert? Aye. All right, thanks very much. So we've got the agenda approved. Under number 4, we have public input on non-agenda items. Anybody would like to speak to the council on something that's not on our agenda? Whether it's a council member. That was something outside. Okay. Hearing none from any of our attendees, we'll go right into the law enforcement report. Matt and JD.
Dave Spack has his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see your hand, Dan. I don't have the full screen here. So go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks. Kind of apropos our latest round of storms and the news of a couple deaths in the Sea Ranch as a result of using portable power generators.
What?
Yeah, there were, and you'll see it in the ICO this week. I thought it might be something that GMAC might like to take up as a discussion item and perhaps an opportunity to help inform the community about the benefits and risks of using power generators. You know, it's a pretty typical backup supply for when the power goes down. We've been really fortunate, I think, over the last several years that the weather hasn't been so severe We haven't had a lot of loss in PG&E support, but the climate's changing. Severe weather appears to be becoming more a part of our lives here on the coast. And people will be turning to alternative sources when they need to have energy in the house. So just a thought as a kind of a community service type of thing, whether or not GMAC might like to consider doing some kind of event or webinar just to help people understand, again, benefits and risks and how to properly use backup power generators. That's it.
I think that's a great idea, Dave. And as a matter of fact, there are alternatives to propane or gas power generators that I think people need to be aware about. And that's something I'm looking into right now that I'm going to do for my house, because I refuse to add a fossil fuel burning machine to my property that I might have to depend on. There are a number of disadvantages to these fossil fuel based machines that I think are addressed by battery oriented backup systems. And I really think the community should be aware of these other options that are, in my mind, much safer and certainly much better for the environment.
I agree, Don. Ultimately, everybody's going to have to find out how much they can afford and what their power demands are, and kind of do cost-benefit analysis. One of the other, when selecting the product, the other topic I think would be helpful, given the expertise in this group about land development, buildings, structures, is to talk about safety, talk about how to safely employ an external power generator, whether it's gas-fired or electric. How to make the right connections, how to avoid getting killed or burned down, or gassed to death. Or anyway, there's so many things to talk about that have to do with properly deploying and living with and maintaining and being ready. All that kind of stuff. That I heard a bunch of stories about people who had these things. They obtained them. They thought, oh yeah, I'm ready, but they'd never turned them on, or they didn't understand how to hook them into the panel, or how much power to get based on their people's expectations for energizing equipment. Anyway, we live in the rural setting, and sometimes PG&E can't help us out for whatever reason, and we're on our own cognizance at that point. So anyway,
David, I'm glad you brought it up in light of what happened down to Sea Ranch. I think it's I recall a couple years back the council undertook an exercise, Gualala Disaster Preparedness Guide. I wonder if there's anything in that guide addressing outages and safety with generators. That would be a good spot to maybe add it to, or any other ideas that the council members might have. I mean, that's just something.
I think it was in there talking about the dangers of gasoline generators.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, as Melissa said, I think there is some mention of that. I don't recall the exact wording of how we didn't certainly go into big detail about generator usage and safety and all that. I don't think, but we did mention some points about external generators.
Okay, and then, but like David says, maybe prior to a storm event coming, and we know that maybe we're going to have an outage, we could refer people to that guide is all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, whatever we may do,
yeah, Matt,
you have to do more than just talk about it during the meeting.
Yeah. Get the word out somehow. Go ahead, Matt.
I just wanted to bring up on mendoready.org, we have put out a lot of generator safety tips. And, we had some pretty serious concerns during the PSPS, the Public Safety Power Shutoffs, regarding people improperly using generators, and from being electrocuted to starting fires to carbon monoxide. And so we put out a lot of information on that. And I'll speak with our OES director, and we'll start putting that back out again. And we did a lot of it prior to the PSPS. I think that we need to start putting out a lot more of it during the wintertime. If you guys want to pluck those things and share them, we encourage that.
Okay, and that's on mendoready.org. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks so much for taking my comment. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was great public input there. Okay, should we go then forward
Is
with
that, excuse me, is that emergency guide of the GMAC on the GMAC site, on the website?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well,
It's
then
in
the
there.
public needs to know that it is there and can be referenced if they want to and they are viewing this meeting.
Yes, and at the same time, they should be aware of what our sheriff, Matt Kendall, said, mendoready.org. Those two resources could be valuable to people.
I think that is
Absolutely.
even, I think that is even mentioned in our guide.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you all, Mary. All right, then let's go on with law enforcement report by Matt and JD.
I'm going to ask Lieutenant Comer to give the stats out first, and then when he's done with that, I'll kind of give you the big overarching views.
Okay.
JD,
All right.
go ahead.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So for January, as last January, I believe we did this, I'm going to give you the annual stats for 2022. These stats, I'll reference our coast sector's overall stats compared to Gualala. And just keep in mind that includes our coast division is 800 square miles, which we cover. And this will be the total for the year of 2022. We've had 3,580 calls for service. Out of those calls for service, 340 of those were in Gualala. So that accounts for about 10% of our call volume there. We had a total of 40 reports taken in Gualala out of 601 reports taken total within our sector. 12 arrests were made in Gualala. That was about 11% of the arrests we made. And then a breakdown of our most significant calls or the higher volume type calls. Assaults, we had 9 in Gualala compared to just under 80. So that accounts for about 11% of the assaults in the coast. Domestic assault was actually pretty high for Gualala. It accounted for 28%. And we had a total of 24. Thefts, there is only 6, which is a very good number. Only 4% of the coast. Burglary, there was only 4, which is also a very good number. Both of those were reduced drastically from the year prior. And so the burglaries only account for 5% out of the coast, which we had about a total of 80. Vandalisms were also low at 7. Trespassing, 17. Alarms, alarm calls were kind of high overall. Gualala accounted for just over 10% of alarm calls at 19. And mentally ill situations or mentally ill subjects, there was a total of 12 related to Gualala that accounted for 20% of what we experienced on the coast last year. The last 2 I have for you is suspicious circumstance calls, where people call in regarding suspicious circumstances. There was a total of 32, and that accounted for 10% of what we received on the coast. That number is actually kind of low for Gualala. And welfare checks, we had a total of 16 out of 187, which accounted for about 9%. So overall, the more major crimes in Gualala have definitely been reduced from 2021. And I will compare the 3,000, the 3,500 plus calls for service we received last year is just about 60% compared to about 40% of the time deputies invested for proactive law enforcement activities, which is a very good number. And Gualala in the South Coast, that number was a a lot higher than 2021, a lot higher than 2020. So deputies have invested a lot of time down there, and I believe the statistics I shared with you reflect that work. So praise to them. And as far as the interactions of people calling in suspicious circumstances, reporting crimes, that also has a significant impact. So praise to that. And there you have it. Any questions for me?
Yeah, JD, I have a question. Did any of your deputies get any mutual aid calls down in Sonoma County?
For just recently or just 2022?
I would say during the fall of 2022.
Kevin, I would have to look at that. I don't know. I know we have responded. I just don't know exactly when.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for JD? Otherwise, go ahead, Matt.
So just a couple of things. I hope when you guys heard those statistics, we have reduced some things with some good proactive patrols, but it's also that really good community where people are being proactive, looking out for their neighbors and sharing information, not only with us, but also with each other. So when these stats drop off and we have a reduction in these things, it's because of a good handshake with the community. And it's because of an open and willingness to have the discussions. And some of them are hard discussions about where the problems are and how we get them dealt with. Now, on a kind of a larger overarching view, I think that we're getting ahead of a few problems that we'd seen in years coming. We've still got some hills to climb with our 5150s and mental health and behavioral health issues. The sheriff's office, through that handshake where we work with behavioral health, and they put those behavioral health workers in the patrol cars with the deputies, we have reduced. I thought that we were sitting right about 40% reduction in calls where my deputies were tied up on these things. Actually, when we did the stats, we went from, I believe, 96 down to 39 investigations that my deputies took, which is a reduction of over 50%. And what that tells me is we've reduced the number of times where law enforcement has got to have that interaction. But the reason for it is because we're making that handshake with them before they have digressed into that area where a policeman has to get involved. And so my hat is off to these young people who came to work with us at the sheriff's office, because they're doing an excellent job. Now, during the storms on the North Coast and Point Arena, we lost 2 lives. One was the contractor in the truck that rolled over, and one was a person asleep in their home. And I hope that we can keep all their families, in our hearts and our prayers. There were a lot of really tense moments for people on the South Coast and on the North Coast, but I really want to thank the community because of the amount of patience and the preparedness that people took getting themselves ready for this. And it lightened the load on all of the first responders, including PG&E, county roads, state road workers. People taking their safety seriously really helped us out. And I just wanted to thank everybody who's listening. I know it was tough times. It was. The city of Point Arena, it looked like pickup sticks from all the trees blown over in there. But everybody worked together. Everybody supported their neighbors. And I think that that's a really good view of how our communities are working. As we move into 2023, we're watching the budget. We're watching everything like a hawk right now, because we do have concerns that our budgets are going to get tighter. But we're not willing to reduce service in order to, save pennies. What we're going to do is we're going to work smarter. And myself, the undersheriff, and my command staff, including JD, are looking for ways where we can better deliver service at a reasonable price, so that we aren't, laying that all off on the taxpayers' backs. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
It's Mary here.
Go ahead, Mary.
At the yesterday at the Action Network board meeting, we were discussing global warming, which of course these storms are a part of, and how it's going to affect this coast, and the idea of a coalition of organizations and companies and businesses working with all the first responders and all of PG&E and the water company and et cetera, to help with the community standing firm against and being able to survive storms like what has come about. So Action Network is starting to take an aggressive stance towards what we can do to help the community through organizations and through a network of people working together. I just wanted to let you know that everyone, including Kevin, will be contacted, GMAC will be contacted regarding working to see what we can do to help.
Excellent, thank you.
Community center and all of the sheriff, the water company, the electrical company, the restaurants, and unfortunately the food bank is moving. But at any rate, everyone concerned about this coastal community and how we can jointly come together in a coalition to reach out and help those in real need, like the people who were suffering so badly.
Yeah, and you know, anytime that our communities come together, we get so much more done with the assistance of our communities than what we do simply with the work of government. I'm sorry, that's just the way it works. And so it's those good handshakes with the community where we know what we have on hand and how to get it out to people.
Mm-hmm. Matt,
any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question, Matt. In the past months, you've been talking about a potential deputy on the South Coast, and you needed maybe a residence down this way. Is that still a need for the Sheriff's Department? Because I might have a couple of possibilities, good possibilities coming up. And
that would be great if you could email those to me, because we do still have that possibility. We've got one young man who seems to be interested in Lieutenant Comer has finally given me his seal of approval, because we never want to put someone in an area until they have the proper tools and training. We want them to be successful before we send them, you know, out and away from the main station. So if you could email those to me, Robert, that'd be great. I put some inquiries out.
Okay, they would be fairly reasonable, and I think it'd be of interest to you. So I'll get that out to you. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Any further questions for
Robert?
Sheriff? Okay, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and thank you, Matt. I'd also like to give a shout out to some of the businesses in the coastal district that pitched in to help the PG&E and their affiliated company crews who came from all over the Western U.S. Trink served dinner to 400 people. The co-op in Point Arena opened up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get coffee and breakfast food out to the crews. It's kind of unsung, but it's important that the whole community pulled together to support the people who are supporting us.
That was, to be honest with you, just absolutely amazing. Dan, you're absolutely correct that these people truly felt supported to be able to do their work. And it's the community coming together for a common interest and a common goal.
Right.
Looks like Tom has his hand up, Robert.
Okay, thanks, Don. Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm using a new setup tonight. I just want to congratulate the sheriff on the excellent work he does. This has been a really trying period for everybody in the county. And Matt and JD just seem to be mastering this. I really appreciate the comments about the community, and I really appreciate Mary's comments about food poverty and on the coast. It's one of my favorite charities up there. And it's not, you know, the idea of domestic violence, of 5150s, which are disturbed people, of houseless people who are out there. This overlaps with the law community. And I think the sheriff's doing a great job with his ride-alongs to divert some of these things that could be police confrontational situations, instead having somebody trained in social work to handle that. I endorse Mary's thoughts that you guys should reach out to the county about the food bank. It's a desperately needed service here, as is housing, as is more mental support for the community. Just so many things go on. And Sheriff, I just want to pass along one idea. Now that I'm living in beautiful Santa Rosa, I've somehow gotten onto the list for the Santa Rosa Police. And they send out their press releases every day to an email list. This seems like a really low effort way. I don't know if you do this or not, do you?
Yeah, we do. And you can go to you can go to our website, MendocinoSheriff.org, I believe. And you can sign up for our press releases, and you'll receive them in email fashion every day.
Excellent. You know, I recommend that to the community. I'm finding that I'm learning all sorts of things about what's going on around me that I didn't know. And I know when I was in Gualala, the community was constantly asking, well, what was that siren last night? What was going on Old Stage Road? So that helps answer a lot of those questions. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you, Sheriff and JD, for the good work you do.
Thank you, Tom, and it was good seeing you.
Thanks for your comments, Tom. Anybody else in our audience would like to talk to Matt or JD while they're here? Okay, well, thank you very much for your law enforcement report, and we look forward to seeing you in February.
You guys take good care, and thanks for having us on.
Okay, thank you. Have
Thank
a good
you,
night.
Sheriff. Thank you, JD.
Okay, that was good. Moving on to number 6, permit applications. We have the tabled item of CDP 2021-0057. That's Meyer. And that's Kevin Evans and Melissa Finley that are handling that. Would you like to open up the retable discussion on that, you two?
We would, but one thing, what we might want to do as a general practice when we're dealing with CDPs is maybe ask if there's anybody on the council that may have a conflict of interest with any of the CDPs that we're dealing with, so we don't have an issue with that down the road. So with that being said, Melissa and I can move forward.
Okay, do we have the applicant here?
No, we don't.
Okay, well then proceed, Kevin and Melissa.
Well, Melissa, I'll go ahead and bounce it to you first if you'd like, and then I can follow up.
If we don't have the reason that this just got tabled because the applicant wasn't here and couldn't speak to the questions we had. So why are we going to address it if no one's here to talk to us about it? Because as far as I know, we don't know anything further. We don't know if it's official that it was an application for a permanent installation of the trailer home.
Douglas, the architect, is here. I'm assuming that he is representing Ms. Meyer or Mayor. Paul Douglas?
That's for the next CDP.
That's the next one, Mary.
Oh, it's the next one? Oh, okay. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, well, what I will do, this is Kevin, and sorry, Melissa, go ahead, and then I've got something to share.
Okay, this is Melissa. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't see anything further we know. If there is, Kevin knows, I haven't heard it.
We did get an updated email from Mr. Schweitzer, the planner from the county, and I hope everybody did get that. But it did indicate the big question of the evening seemed to be whether or not the motorhome could be permitted. And on the updated permit that was, looks like November 30th, 2022, the updated copy said that the motorhome to be used as construction support to remain as a FCU family care unit after construction is complete. So that was a question that everyone had, is where's the official word that was going to be added? Everything else is consistent with the initial permit that we received. The only question was really regarding the motorhome and whether or not it would become a permanent fixture rather than a temporary fixture. So I think that question was answered from Mr. Schweitzer's email to us, and I think Mary forwarded it to everybody on the council for their review. So Melissa and I open it up to what the council's pleasure would be.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, since we got this email apparently from the planning department, correct? This does not necessarily mean the planning department approves it, correct? It's just officially now part of the CDP. Is that correct?
Correct. And that's what they're saying. They added that component, that there was a change in the CDP to add that line on there because there was a question from a temporary to a permanent structure.
Okay, so there's no implication of approval of it?
No.
Okay. So I guess the question then falls on us as well as others who have to approve the CDP in one way or another, other entities, whether or not we approve of it, correct?
That would be correct, because it would be our recommendation that would be forwarded to the Planning Commission.
So it's up to the council then, or somebody to make a motion, I think, unless we have further deliberations and a vote could be taken. I will tell you folks right now that I will be abstaining, okay, from the vote.
Robert, Tom has his hand up. Tom Murphy.
Tom Murphy has his hand up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
ahead, I'm curious. I did not see the email from the county, and I don't know the code on this, but it seems to me that a lot of people have asked in the past about using mobile homes as permanent dwelling units on their property. And it is subject to a county code. I don't know. Have you explored whether or not that's legal under county code and current zoning?
Council? Anybody?
I would suspect that it would not have been added to the CDP if it was not going to be allowed. I don't think the planner would add that as part of the verbiage if that was something that was against their county policy. I think he would direct the applicant to that would not be an acceptable use and would not have added that.
Have you asked the planner about that? Because as you said earlier, there's no inference of whether it's approved or disapproved. And I've seen cases in the past at GMAC where things that were illegal were proposed, and GMAC talked to the planners about it and found out that they were not allowed, and found out that helped inform the motion and the action that we took on it. So I think that's a fundamental step, is talking to the planner and checking on that and seeing what the code is. If you just approve this, you may give a precedent for other people who wish to do this. And whether or not that's a good thing, I won't comment, but I just think that's something to watch out for.
You know, this is Don. It seems to me that this is kind of exceptional to have a permanent motorhome installation on a piece of property that's in a neighborhood with other properties. In other words, there are neighbors around. Is that correct? There are neighbors near this property.
It's not a primary dwelling. It's an accessory. It's an 80, whatever those, that's an accessory dwelling.
Well, ADUs have specific definitions and they can't be motorhomes.
Okay, well, I myself, I didn't look into exactly where this property is located. I'm sorry I didn't do that, but my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it is in an area near other homes. In other words, there are neighbors around who would see this motorhome. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. Then I think it's important that the neighbors, you know, if they have any objection to it, that we hear from them. If they don't have an objection, that's fine. Then, you know, that can inform our decision.
I think, Don, I think,
like to,
oh, go ahead.
Make a comment here.
We can't hear you.
Do you know how many people do not have a home in this country who can't even afford a cardboard box under an underpass? I see you people being judgmental about someone's place to live when they're desperate for a place to live and can't afford anything else. I have neighbors who live full-time in RVs. What we don't need is judgment. What we need is someone who does safety inspection. Because there are places around here, there are houses that I wouldn't let a pig live in. And they're stick built and they're approved. We need the health and safety inspection. We don't need judgment on what it is they're living in.
Hey, Robert.
I'm finding
Robert.
really
Kevin.
the way y'all are talking about this.
Yeah, Kevin.
Okay, when I spoke with the planner back in November when we first were going to have this, and the change was requested, he had no problems with the way the application was being filed. So I'm going on his word that it was something that he as staff put forward to the Planning Commission. The second item, to address Don's concern, we've already seen this on a couple times where it's really not GMAC or the applicant's responsibility to contact the neighboring properties. It usually falls on the county before they have the hearing at the Planning Commission that they notify all the adjacent properties, I think up to 300 feet. So for anybody in the public to be looking at our website to see that this is on the agenda, they probably wouldn't, but they would get notified at a county planning commission meeting.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kevin. And Melissa, you make some good points too. I mean, clearly we need affordable housing in this area, and it's desperately needed throughout California, as a matter of fact, not only here. I'm not sure this particular motorhome really addresses that situation, but I'm not opposed to affordable housing being put up, wherever we can put it up, because we really need it. But I'm not sure this situation really addresses that. Now, I'm noticing that Dave has his hand up. However, I think at the moment, it's just council members that are discussing this. Is that correct, Robert?
Yes, just council members, and we'll get to you, Dave. No worries.
Okay.
Well, I think Tom weighed in on it, so I think it'd probably be appropriate for Dave to weigh in on it.
Yeah,
Well, I wasn't saying Dave shouldn't wait.
no, let's just go through the council members at present here. And then we'll get to Dave right away. I just want to say, from all my years of experience on GMAC, we look at these applications pretty closely, and we try to be as thorough as possible. And I'm looking at, or I think we should be looking at, what it says on the CDP. And that's the only point I want to make. We are trying to give our recommendation or our advisory non-recommendation for what is being proposed on the paperwork, on this CDP. That's just another angle on this. Okay, you guys? So any other council members, and we'll get back out to the audience.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Henry.
So very much not a lawyer, but looking at on the county website for mobile homes / manufactured homes, there's certainly no indication that there would be a blanket prohibition on having a permanent mobile home on the property. I sort of agree. I think it was Kevin who was saying they'd be surprised if it were on there and illegal, though Tom's point that can happen is an interesting one, and definitely worth taking under advisement. But looking at the mobile home / manufactured homes permits, installation, inspections, and zoning requirements, it just definitely says that you can have a permit application for without a permanent foundation, and it talks about what needs to happen if it's going to be permanent. So if they get the necessary permit and inspections, as far as I can tell, there's no issue there. So we do see certainly that they applied and the county received their amendment to the coastal development permit. It'd be nice to see the whole document is sort of exists in one thing, but I don't know that that's really how the county necessarily works on this. But feels like at least some of the things we talked about before were addressed, even though it'd be nice to have a representative here. I don't know if they had said they were going to make the January 5th meeting. They never talked about the fact that it was moved. I hope they knew, but that may be why they're not present.
All right, thanks, Henry.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else from the council? Let's open the floor to David.
No, I think Dan.
Dan wants.
Dan, I'm sorry, I'm not having the whole screen here. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay.
And then we'll get to you, David.
I think part of this discussion goes to our function, which is, as I understand it, not enforcement oriented, but rather advisory.
Right.
It's not up to us to enforce the codes. It's the county's job. They got people paid to do that. And the reason we postponed this from the last meeting was because that we didn't actually have a copy of the CDP application that indicated that they wanted to use that as a more permanent structure on the property. And now it's there. I think we're ready to meet our obligations.
Okay.
I'd agree with that.
I'd agree with that. Any other council members? Okay, let's let David Shapak weigh in.
Thank you, Robert, and thanks, Council, for allowing me to speak. A couple things, and really pertaining to the role of GMAC as it's constituted. This is not an enforcement entity, and the county doesn't resource this entity, nor does it instruct this entity in implementing county code. And I think it's unfortunate that GMAC is assigned review of applications before the county has completed its legally required review across all of its jurisdictional issues, whether it's planning, setbacks, et cetera, whether it's building appropriate code compliance, whether it's environmental health, the use of wells and municipal water supply and septic systems, whatever the county is obliged to review, in its code enforcement capacity ought to be done in front of GMAC, because to place GMAC in front of that code compliance role is in fact the cart before the horse. So it's unfortunate that that appears to be the case here, although Kevin, I do hear you loud and clear that the planner told you that the application appeared to be acceptable, but it sounds to me more like that the application was accepted for review, that it's complete. That's not a bottom line result of the obliged review, legal review. Another topic is the use of the term trailer coach, motor home, mobile home, and manufactured house. These are all different. And clearly, mobile homes and manufactured houses are designed for permanent occupancy. They are structurally engineered, they're constructed, presumably to be code compliant, but also to be safe for permanent occupancy under a variety of conditions if installed correctly. Motorhomes and trailer coaches are not necessarily designed for permanent occupancy, and this body has no way, no information, and frankly, no way to ascertain the safe deployment of a motorhome or a trailer coach, or otherwise known as recreational vehicles, on a permanent basis. And regardless of the philosophical dilemma that we find ourselves in with a shortage of affordable housing and the fact that people are unhoused, which is a heartbreaking condition, one way or the other, we have to figure out how to deliver housing. But the role of GMAC isn't necessarily to solve that problem fully. We're to be cognizant of it and certainly empathetic. But you have, as Robert said, an application prima facie in front of you. And the question, a central question is, do you have enough information to render advice? Render advice within your jurisdiction and within your skill set without having to make assumptions. And if you do have to make assumptions, then that alters the type of advice you can make rationally. It really forces the GMAC into a questioning position rather than a definitive advising position. Thank you very much for hearing my comment.
Well, thank you for your comments, David. So there's no applicant here, so back to Kevin and Melissa.
One more comment is that the small house she's building is for herself. And it's very small, and she has a teenage boy. And the accessory unit is for the teenage boy to live in until he goes off to college and when he comes back to visit mom.
Okay, but council members, back to the agenda item and what it says. Can we do any type of business on that the way it is?
Well,
Dan,
Robert, go ahead, Dan.
I don't see why we couldn't.
Robert, I would like to make a motion to approve the CDP as submitted and forward it to the county so they can forward it to the Planning Commission. But yeah, so I make the motion to approve.
And
okay.
I'll second that.
And Melissa will second that. So we have had enough discussion on this. We've got a first and a second. We've got a motion and a second. We should officially vote.
Yes.
Based upon that motion. Okay. Melissa.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Henry.
You're muted, Henry.
Oh, he is?
Abstain for the moment. I'm reading more legal documentation from Mendocino, trying to figure something out.
Okay, Kevin, we'll come back to you then, Henry.
Aye.
Okay. Don.
I'm going to abstain because, well, I don't think I have to explain myself, but I really felt they should have been here tonight. the owners.
Um,
That's why we tabled it the last time, so I'm not prepared to vote.
Henry?
Aye.
Okay, and Robert? I will abstain. So we've got 3 ayes, is that correct?
I believe 4, or
Is
No.
it?
I
What
think
did
we
you-
have Henry, Melissa, Dan, did you vote aye?
I did.
You
And
did,
I.
okay.
That's 4.
Okay, so we have a 4 ayes and
2 abstentions.
2 abstentions, okay. So who would like to write the letter to the county?
I'll be happy to.
Okay. Is everybody satisfied with that outcome? Then we can move on. I mean, whether we are or not, that was the outcome. So let's move on.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Next we have CDP 2019-0002, along with a variance 2019-0001. Applicant is Abels, and the architect, Mr. Douglas, is here. As is customary, we usually let the applicant and or their representative speak to the application. Would you like to do that, Frank? Is he still here?
No, but Paul Douglas is he the
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm calling you Frank. Paul. Douglas, I got
Yeah.
right, but okay.
Yeah, yes, I'm here. Thank you for letting me give you a couple of thoughts. We're here to ask for your approval of the CDP as submitted. Back in early 2020, we came before the GMAC with our initial application, and we have now submitted all of the documentation for a complete application to the county for a coastal development permit. Back when it was reviewed in early 2020, Lloyd Chasey had 3 comments, and he wanted the plans to represent erosion control related to the steep slopes of the property. That was number 1. They wanted permeable gravel on their driveway, number 2, and then they were okay with approving the coastal variance height of 29 feet. I don't know if the county has submitted the drawings to you, but on the architecture sheet number 1, we have provided all of the required erosion control and drainage control on the property that was asked for. So if there are any other questions that you might have, I have all of the drawings here and all of the documentation that we have completed. I think that we're ready to move ahead and get our building permit. So that's the end of what I have to say for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul, for refreshing our memories on the project. I looked over the paperwork. I'm pretty familiar with the parcel. Fellow council member Henry Meyer went out to the parcel today because he's been relatively new on our GMAC, and he got to see what was going on out there. But reading off all the paperwork, it looks like you've gone through quite a bit, and you've been very, very thorough with your CDP. I can tell you that right now, after all the CDPs I've seen over the years. In the CDP, it references all the things you've had to do here on the second page of how many pages this is. And I was specifically interested in the variance, and you're looking at a foot difference from, and again, we had already approved this, so I'm just going over something with you or with the rest of the council that we've basically already approved. Why is the variance coming to us again after 2 years?
I'm not sure why they're coming around a second time. Perhaps they wanted me to show or have the drawings show those changes that Lloyd Chasey had asked for. And they are on the architectural drawings sheet number 1, which I held up.
Yeah. And which I saw on the website of the county.
And I think that the county, well, they reviewed it with me too. And I think they wanted to go back to you to show you that we have complied and provided the information.
Mm-hmm. There was also in our minutes from back in 2020, there was also a notation from our past council member, Lloyd Chasey, that the neighbor had no objection to this 1 foot difference in height. I noted there was a letter that you wrote, or that, you wrote, Paul, to planner Jesse Waldman, and it talks about how you would rather not increase the grading on the site, but because it would involve much more excavation, it would involve much more environmental destruction, is how I look at it, just to get that extra foot to match the 28-foot height limit. So the additional excavation on the site, I just think I would be still in favor of this variance. I would think the other council members would want to weigh in too, but personally, after I've reviewed everything on this, our minutes included from back when, I see no issue with this variance request.
Thank you.
Any other council members?
I was there today, and I would just echo that. I mean, looking at it, having the building be 1 foot taller seems just much less impactful than trying to make the ground be 1 foot lower. That I see no reason to oppose the variance.
Okay. Any other council members? Have you had a chance to even review this, or would you like to weigh in on it? Otherwise, I'd like to make
Melissa, you're muted.
Muted? Oh, did Melissa? I didn't see her name. Again,
I didn't look at the CDP. I'd like just the bare bones, of the project: house, square foot, garage. That's it. That's all I want to know.
Okay, it's on a ½ acre at the very top of Anchor Bay subdivision. They're looking at building a 29-foot height structure. If Paul wants to weigh in, he surely can. I don't see the square footages right offhand, but I think it was about a 2,900 square foot home. This has been a family property for decades, to my knowledge. Let me see here. What was the square footage on that, Paul?
I can tell you, the square footage comes to a total of 2,496 square feet of livable space. The building footprint is 32 by 30 on 2 levels. And then the uppermost level is 18 by 32. And that's how you come to the 2,496 square feet. On the first level is the garage, laundry, and then the main living is the 960 square foot. And then that top level, it has another bedroom, which is the 32 by 18.
Oh, so the 2,400 includes the garage.
It does, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not that big. Gotcha.
I was mistaken.
Sorry. Excuse me, I just wanted to add that the ridge faces north-south. So for the property above, they're looking down the ridge line, and the slope of the roof goes to the left and to the right. So it's just the ridge peak that is encroaching that 1 foot.
1 foot, one foot's nothing. It's just
into their potential view corridor, or whatever that view corridor is, right? Yeah. Okay.
That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah. Okay. Any other council members before or somebody makes a motion? Okay. Well, thanks, Paul, for being here again, and sorry for calling you Frank. That's the applicant. So I'll make a motion that we give our advisory recommendation to approve Coastal Development Permit variance number 2019-0001.
Robert, before you make that motion, can I ask a question? I
didn't see you.
I was feeding some firewood into my.
Don, go ahead. We can always come back. Okay.
I'm just curious, Paul, what measures have you taken to reduce energy consumption other than the standard Title 24 stuff? I mean, so for example, is this house going to have solar panels? Since it's a new house, aren't all new houses in California now required to have solar panels?
To the answer of solar panels, we decided not to have solar panels on this structure. We're using standard Title 24 energy compliance measures, and we've met those with the insulation and so on, the lighting that we're using. We really have gone, to some extent to make sure that we're compliant. And we're just using a good energy consuming furnace. Of course, we're on propane up there, or no, what are we on? Propane up there?
Yeah.
What's the gas?
Why didn't you recommend a heat pump?
A heat pump might be a good idea. You can add that as a suggestion.
To my knowledge, we're just.
I mean, there is a California law requiring solar panels on new construction. So, how is it that your house does not have solar panels or will not have solar panels?
It wasn't required when we made the application, and it hasn't been brought to our attention now before you did. So I don't know how to answer that question.
I mean, if you had solar panels, you're powering your own heater, the heat pump, with your own generated power, and you're not reliant on delivery of fossil fuel.
I appreciate your thoughts.
So, Dawn, that's good information for the applicant and the architect, but if we're just we have approved this application before, and I thought we were only going through the variance part of this at this point. I think though it's good you mentioned it, Dawn, because it may be brought up by the county anyway, and this way the applicant and Paul will be prepared for that eventuality if the county brings it up, that they need to have solar panels.
I'm not going to vote against this.
But no, I'm just saying we're not.
I'm curious. Whenever somebody's building new construction here, I'm curious what they are doing to save energy and to avoid use of fossil fuels. That's an interest I have.
You always do. That's what's great about you. But I'm just saying that this is something that we already approved the CDP back in 20. Okay. But it's good you brought it up. We're deciding, or we're giving our recommendation on the variance at this point. Okay. So, but anyway, be prepared, Mr. Douglas. Okay, so again, Dawn, I appreciate all that information that you always bring us. Okay, it's not anything I didn't want to hear. So again, I'll make the motion that we give our advisory recommendation to approve coastal development permit 2019-002, the variance portion, which is 2019-0001, as presented to us in this revised fashion that we saw on the website.
Second.
And Henry makes the second on that. Okay, I can take a voice vote on that variance. Melissa.
Melissa, you're muted.
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And Robert? Aye. Okay, between Henry and I, we'll write a letter on this and get it off to the county on this revised coastal development permit variance. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. And,
thank you, Mr. Douglas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
Good night.
Okay. We've done pretty good on our permit applications tonight. So let's go on. Number 7, we have old business. Something reminded me that we used to have what was it called? A Gualala Services Committee. Didn't we have 1, 2, 3 items included in the Gualala Services Committee, or did we agree to break this back down again?
The affordable housing was broken out.
It was broken back down again.
Economic development report 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
And so there are 4 items under this. The
Okay,
parks report, the affordable housing, economic and social development, and the survey.
Okay, Mary, thanks for clearing that up again for me. I just remember the Gualala Services Committee thing, and I wanted to ask about it. Okay, so Gualala Parks report. We had a good report last month. Do we have anything new on that? Kevin, Dan, and Henry?
Well, the only thing I have to report is the county has not had a resolution yet to accept the $2.2 million from the state, so it has not been received. And from all reports, it appears that there's significant damage up at the park again because of trees that have fallen and branches. So no telling what's going to happen with the maintenance and repairs to the park. And lastly, I'm sure everybody saw the story about the county's thought about pursuing the sale of Bower Park to either a nonprofit or a private entity. So that's on the table now too from the county.
Where was that? In the paper?
Yeah.
Local paper? Oh boy, I didn't see that.
I think it was in the Anderson Valley, but but I also do have confirmation from our supervisor that that was a discussion by the board.
That's interesting to hear that. Anybody have a copy of that article, or how the ICO, wouldn't they maybe want to see a copy of that?
Probably.
Yeah.
Was it a discussion or a decision to sell it?
No, it's a discussion.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, there was no decision. It was just a discussion to and it's not just Bower Park, it's all 6 of the county parks that they would like to liquidate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had, they had talked a little bit about that when I was attending those meetings during the last closure of Bower Park. They never got into detail about it though, so I'd like to dig up the recording of that particular part of the section and hear what they had to say about it. Because it was a topic for future conversation, but they didn't actually really discuss it at the time. So I'm not shocked, but I'm concerned. I could see ways that winds up being way better. I could also see ways that winds up being a disaster. So, sorry, Kevin, if you didn't have anything else, I think I can. I can shed just a little bit more on what you were just discussing, because I emailed Janelle Rao earlier today to ask for a status update on Bower Park, so I could hopefully talk about it here.
Good.
So what she said is the park is closed for now due to the significant damage due to fallen trees. Also, many other hazardous trees that are compromised need to get taken down, and that the county has an arborist going tomorrow to evaluate further and provide recommendations. She said they'll address urgent hazards immediately, e.g. they'll take down trees that are hung up in other tree limbs, etc., and then they'll assess next steps, but they have no immediate plans to open the park. So I guess we'll wait, and I'll try to get further updates once they hear from the arborist and start formulating their plan. Dan, was that a hand up or?
Yeah, I went up there a couple of times in the last week, pretty much after the biggest blast of wind that we took, and personal perception of it is it took a beating, a real beating.
Yeah.
Playground equipment was pretty hardly damaged. The upper playground was damaged. The lower playground appeared to have escaped most of it. More fence damage, and the whatever that building up there with the restrooms, I don't know what they call it, took a hit. Not a fatal hit, but it did take a hit. And there is lumber down pretty much everywhere. It really smacked.
Maybe it's just as well that they haven't started any work yet to, rehabilitate the park.
Oh yeah.
Anybody working
at
on
that
it
point
had a problem.
Yeah. So thank you, Dan, for that, for the on the ground detail. And the last thing I have to add on this is that she also mentioned as an aside in her response that the resolution to accept the grant will be on the board's agenda to acknowledge the funding. And then after that, they'll engage with the state on next steps. So sounds like at the very least, like that small incremental step, I think is my reading of that is that it will be on the board's agenda for the next meeting. She didn't specify that, but that's my read of what she meant.
Oh, for the meeting on the 24th?
That's my guess. I mean, she said it will be on the board's agenda. I guess that maybe that means something else, but I assume if I said that about GMAC, I would mean the next agenda. I assume she means the same thing.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Any other council member questions? Okay. Do you think, Henry and Kevin, that some of that money that the state is giving the county for that park could be used for this latest maintenance or cleanup?
I would suspect they're probably going to, because I think didn't the governor declare the state of emergency?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the county will have funds coming in from the federal and state level that we'll be able to use for emergency repairs. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys, for that report. I am next, I guess. Affordable housing report. I gave what I knew at the last month's meeting, and I've been away for a while, and then with all that's happened lately, I haven't followed up much on this, so I don't have anything for tonight on the affordable housing report. Economic development report. That's Kevin and Henry.
From my end, there's a couple things. Visit Mendocino came down and met with Mr. Spock and Robert and I to reintroduce the idea of an entry sign on Highway 1 as you enter Gualala. Welcome to Mendocino. So that's being revisited. So that will be good to help with our branding of Mendocino County. With all the rain and everything, I know I was working with Robert closely to put together a gathering or a get together of local business owners to try and reintroduce everyone to each other and see what we can do as a community to support the businesses and shop local. So I know that everything was kind of put on hold with all the rain. So I'll be working with Robert again to get that put together probably for February. But I think that's our business community needs that kind of support. And I think bringing everybody back together again will be a good step forward. Henry, do you have anything?
I don't this month.
Okay. So Robert, that's our report.
Okay, thanks you guys.
Robert,
yeah, Don, go ahead.
Kevin, you mentioned that that sign, on the the north side of the bridge, that welcome sign, Gualala.
Yes.
Yeah, I stopped there and looked at it a couple of weeks ago. It's extremely outdated. It looks like it's whatever they put up there was put up there, like 20 years ago or something, or longer.
Longer, 40.
I'm wondering whether that whole sign should just be moved closer to town. I think most people, when they drive by, they don't even see it.
I don't even see it.
There.
Well, Don, the sign that they're proposing is going to be a uniform sign that will be at all of the entry points into Mendocino County. And if I'm not mistaken, it's not going to be a wooden sign, but it's going to be more of a metal sign. And Dave or Robert, because I know Dave was at that gathering with the representative from Visit Mendocino, but they've got more of a modern look that they want to project, and they want to move it more on an angle to oncoming traffic heading north than the existing one right now, where you really have to kind of turn your neck to see on the side. They want to make it more visible, maybe light it up with some solar powered lights to make it real visible to people that are coming into Mendocino County and Gualala.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, just making the letters more higher contrast to the background would make it more legible. It's not legible at all now.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little outdated. Actually, a little weathered.
Mm-hmm. I spoke up at that meeting, but Dave and Kevin and I attended, and I have a real affection for that wooden sign. So I would love to see that get recycled somehow. Okay, so whether it's not used anymore, it's fine, but and something more modern is done through Visit Mendocino County and all, but we need to recycle that old sign somehow.
Yeah.
Well, when you recycle that sign, you need to do something with that building next to the post office that's slowly and quietly rotting to the ground.
Yeah, yeah. That's community center property. That's something they're going to be probably addressing at some point.
If they don't, they're going to, that's not going to be anything but a pile of kindling.
Robert, it looked like Dave wanted
to. Did Dave have his hand up? Thanks, you guys. David, go ahead.
I just wanted to echo Kevin's report and Robert, your report. My sense, I too had the sense in talking with the nice lady from Visit Mendocino that the intent is some form of metal sign with high contrast imagery and text. We had asked that she let us have a look before they go into production, just so, I think it'd be a great thing for this group to opine about, given everyone's local sensibility of design and what fits and doesn't. But the idea is that the sign, that new metal sign oriented to travelers and vehicles, not to pedestrians or bicyclists, would be located closer to the highway. So it's less of a, kind of a neck burner, a neck turner to watch that business directory sign go by at 55 miles an hour, but something that, again, it'd be located likely within the Caltrans right of way and probably somewhere close to the existing pole line. Anyway, that's all I had.
When we're speaking of metal, you guys, when we're speaking of metal, what kind of metal will withstand the elements around these parts? Will it be copper or stainless steel, or what are we thinking? Or what do you think they're thinking?
Typical highway signs are, they're coated steel. Probably, up to maybe a quarter of an inch thick. Probably a little less than that. Actually, there's steel sheeting. You'll if you stop and look at a stop sign, you'll get an idea what that looks like. And it might be a little thicker, but really the key is the way it's put in the ground and held up. It'll require some framing, because something that gets big, of course, becomes a sail, and it has some forces that begin to work on it. So it'll likely be, it's really the mount that makes the most difference. But otherwise, the sign it'll hold up as long as the paint and the coatings hold up, like any other traffic sign.
And Robert, hang on, Dan, real quick. And as David said, Robert, they plan to bring the design and the construction and all the specs back to GMAC for our review of it. So we're going to be fully informed along the whole process. So that's a good thing.
Am I missing anybody's hand? Anybody else?
Dan.
Dan, okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask Kevin if he doesn't mind changing hats for half a moment here. Yeah, flip it around. And if the community center would be interested in having the old sign refurbished in on the corner of their property there, you know, down by where the farmers market and such happens.
That's a good idea, Dan.
I think that's an excellent idea. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Don. Yeah, I think that sign, because the sign from Visit Mendocino is going to be specific for Mendocino. And I think if this sign's moved closer to town, it would really reflect Gualala and the businesses, as you can see on that sign. So I think capturing Robert's idea that it has a lot of sentimental value is something that could be remounted. But that would be something that we could mention to the community center board and see if they would be interested in putting that sign somewhere around the entrance to the center, to the community center.
Okay, let's make a point of that to bring it up to the community center board at some point. Yep.
Can I say something about that?
Tom, go ahead.
Tom, it's Tom.
Yes, Tom.
You know, when we held meetings about business development a couple of years ago, it was interesting. I mean, obviously we want to support the whole county's economic development as well as our own. But one of the pieces of feedback I got, and I remember it very strongly, was it would be really nice to welcome people into Gualala and tell them what they'll find here. It's just way too easy to drive through Gualala if you don't know that. But if people are looking for particular things, and when I look at this sign, you know, what I like about it is that it's redwood. It says Gualala, loud and proud. It's a little hard to read what businesses are involved, but maybe we could update this. And I don't know who does it, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the community center, whether GMAC can get involved. But I'd like to see a way to get some funds to promote the local businesses and make sure visitors to our community know what's there when they come to town.
Yeah, I think we all have similar sentiments on that sign, and we want to make it work for ourselves. So at one point, I mean, it was called the Gualala in the olden days, back before I got here in the early 80s, in the 70s, I think. It was called the Gualala Beautification Committee, I believe. And a lot of the old timers were instrumental in getting this sign placed where it was. They even got a Caltrans permit for it, an advertising type of a permit. So I'm all for, you know, refurbishing it, recycling it, seeing what property owner might want to put it on their property, where a great new location might be for it. So yeah, I'm glad we're all thinking alike on that, because it's a part of history, in my opinion.
You might want to talk to our friends up at West Business Development in Fort Bragg and see if there'd be a grant available for doing this. I think Marianne might be, you talk to Marianne about it, and she might understand that the community wants to do this and come up with, you know, $50,000, $60,000 to do a really nice sign. Yeah. So just a thought.
I remember her, but that seems like a lot of money, but whatever. Okay.
My feelings, Robert, just last couple of words.
Sure.
The sign, I think, is worth salvaging if we can do it, you know, reasonably. However, I don't think it really works very well as a sign that you look at while you're driving by. I think it should be more in town for people who are walking around. They can see the sign, they can see what businesses are, maybe where the businesses are located, that kind of thing. But for a drive-by, I think you know, given how small the writing is for the businesses, I think it's kind of useless.
It's absolutely useless. The only way I could ever read that, I couldn't even tell there were words on it until I pulled up and parked, and I had to walk up to it to read it.
Yeah, that's always been the case, Melissa. And there's been designs drawn up on how to make those little placards larger. There were different businesses that were interested in getting their name on there. So this is all stuff for another discussion. Okay. I know it was good to talk about it under economic development, but let's revisit this. Okay.
Yeah. Economic development. I've gotten really nervous about our businesses because I thought there was an optometrist here before I moved here because it was there on Google Maps, and it's not. And we had a pharmacy that came in and disappeared, and now we don't even have an office supply store. They're just gone. Yeah. There's no place. I don't know that there's any place I could go get a photocopy done short of the Point Arena Library.
A photocopy?
Yeah.
Wait, the print shop's gone?
I'm down to my office.
Yep, gone.
Wow.
When did that happen?
It had closed partially, and then it got to where it was open only for established customers with appointment only. And then I walked by there the other day. It's empty. It's for lease.
Oh, man.
Yeah, she retired. She left the community.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, she did it in December.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's continue here and go on to the community survey. That's Kevin and Henry. Anything to report on that, you two?
Yeah, what I asked, and I emailed Henry earlier, and he was gracious enough to accept. So what we're going to do is show you what we've received through December, the responses from the community, the percentages, and what we're going to do with the council's approval is put together a introductory letter and attach the survey so the council or so the board of supervisors can see exactly what the responses were from our community. And we would do not only the pie charts, but we would, if Henry's able to do his magic, add the comments as well, because I think they're very pertinent to the survey's outreach and the input from the community. So Henry, all yours.
Yeah, so did you want me to try to go through the comments now? I mean, I have not reviewed them.
Yeah, if the council doesn't have a problem with seeing the comments, I think it would be very worthwhile if you're able to do that.
Yeah, sure. These are, I mean, anonymized to the extent that there's no information other than the comment listed. You know, if somebody put something non-anonymized in their comment, I have not filtered for that.
Okay.
So I'll try to do that as I go. Okay, so I'll see if I can share this appropriately. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so here are the pie charts. So there were 83 responses. So let's see, do you reside in? And Kevin, we still have the thing, by the way, where a lot of the prompts get cut off just from the way it generates the slideshows. So would you mind backfilling the prompts as we go when they get cut off?
Okay.
Like just saying them out if anybody has any questions like this. So 9% Sea Ranch, 30% Anchor Bay, 61% Gualala. do you pay taxes? We still have one person who said no. This is, do you feel that the taxes you pay should adequately fund the maintenance of Bower Park and support fire ambulance? I don't remember exactly the rest of that prompt.
Hang on.
But
it also business and law enforcement services in your community.
Right. And that's a couple people had no opinion. 11% said no, should not adequately fund those things, and 86% said yes. How effective is your county board of supervisors in meeting? I don't know why this one gets cut off, but
in meeting the needs of you, your family, and coastal community.
So 10% of people said effective, or 8 people said effective, 18 said no opinion, and 57 said not effective. How effective are your local boards, e.g. GMAC, Sea Ranch Association, etc., in
representing you, your family, and the coastal community?
Thank you. And that was 24 no opinion, 22 effective, 37 not effective. Are you concerned about the current state of the infrastructure?
And that's infrastructure. Oops, let's see. So the question is, are you concerned about the current and future condition of the services in your community? Parks, roads, broadband service, water, sewer, fire protection, medical, and support for your local businesses.
81 people said yes, 1 person no, 1 person no opinion. Or maybe not, no response. Are you willing or able to pay more taxes, assessments, or fees that would stay locally to improve the level of services and
infrastructure in your community?
Looks like 3 people said no opinion, 23 people said no, and 56 people said yes. Would you support creating a more local government in your coastal community?
Okay, and that is if it returns a portion of the tax dollars you currently pay to support Bower Park, safety services, and the infrastructure.
It's like 7 people said no opinion, 11 people said no, and 66 people said yes. Or I guess 10 people said no, and 66 people said yes. Are you a registered voter in Mendocino or Sonoma counties? 10 people said no, 73 said yes. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's the end of that. Okay, so the text responses.
Could you send me all that information, please? Because I missed some of it in typing. I'd like to get it, into the minutes if I can.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you could send that to me, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just write that down so I don't forget. Okay. So can everybody see this screen with the text responses?
Yeah.
Yes.
Such as it is. Let's see if I can. It's not gonna help.
And while Henry's doing that, I will tell you that any of the documents that we forward to our Board of Supervisors will be redacted and not include any of the names or contact information of the respondents.
That's correct. Which is why, Mary, I will send it to you. It might, I might not be able to get to it till tomorrow because I do want to make sure I don't send anything your way that shouldn't be potentially public.
I really appreciate that. And if you could at some time send me each one of them so that I can put them in the book that I have, each one of the responses and all of the both sides, etc., so that I can have it in a book, hard copy, and put into the archives in case we need it, because the website is updated and old things are thrown out and deleted, and I would not like this deleted really 4 or 5 years from now. If the supervisors come back and say, well, prove it, you can grab the book and say, yeah, here are 80-some people who wrote back and said, here's each one of their comments and each one of the papers, and it, it would be good to keep.
Yes. How do you feel about getting that in spreadsheet form?
You mean
you'd rather have the individual? Anyway, why don't I follow up with you about it? Yeah, why don't I follow up with you separately about how you want me to turn for that?
Yeah,
okay.
we can discuss it. That would be great. That'd be great.
Okay, great.
Good.
Okay, so can you identify any services or infrastructure? So this prompt is, can you identify any services or infrastructure that County of Mendocino has provided to our coastal community? So we've got Bower Park County roads, law enforcement, Sheriff's Bower Park. Not many. In one conversation, a county official in a meeting in Ukiah told me that Gualala was in Sonoma County. When corrected, she refused to acknowledge her error. Not great. We are unincorporated and have very little service to provide for the throngs coming here now. No public trash container nor public toilet. We also have a significant homeless problem encamped in our woods. Sheriff, sporadic law enforcement permitting. They do repair the roads, but not very well. Too many unfilled potholes, not sufficient trimming of roadside vegetation. The number of times a county crew has spent any time doing work in the area in the past year could probably be counted on one hand. Pretty much the answer to your question is no. We have just a straight no. Law enforcement, public transportation, electricity, garbage services, no. Limited Bower Park maintenance, some road maintenance, some law enforcement. Schools, road and right-of-way maintained, Sheriff, Health and Human Services, planning, building, Bower Park. Not really, no. I would like to see a list of what the county provides for Gualala and separately up to Anchor Bay. County roads, Bower Park, planning and building, public health. Repaired some potholes on Glennon Drive and Bourne Way. Sheriff, building department. Public roads, Bower Park, Sheriff Services, Public Bus Transit, Board of Supervisors representation, Land Use and Development Regulation and Permitting, GMAC representation. Not really. Very slow road maintenance. Many roads, fire, police, administration, partial ambulance, some parks and tourism. Recent mowing along Old Stage Road, library/bookmobile, marginal road maintenance, MTA. The county roads are maintained. I didn't answer the prior question because I didn't know how my taxes are supposed to support business, market and promote them. And we have our own tax supports and our fundraising for local fire, medical and ambulance services, which are quite good. I'm guessing you were referring to county property taxes. Roads not in great condition, none. Road stripe painted on Pacific Woods in 2022. Ambulance and bookmobile. Sheriff. Yes, Sheriff's Department crime investigations, DOT road paving and repair, building permits and inspections, etc. Road maintenance, bookmobile. They restriped Sunset Drive, but it's still potholed in places. Excuse me. Not at the moment. I have no idea. The county roads seem woefully neglected for much of the time. Bower Park is so badly neglected that it has finally been closed. Ted Williams did respond during the COVID shutdown when I asked him to speak with the local business that was ignoring the mandate. Abandoned vehicles are being taken care of by locals rather than the county from what I could see. They do help with voting and certainly collect our taxes well. Some road maintenance, bookmobile, minimal sheriff, roads, law enforcement in Bower Park, roads, sheriff in Bower Park. Well, they striped Sunset Drive and filled in a few of the potholes. Other than that, not anything I can think of. Sheriff's Department provides law enforcement. Shipping program is helpful. Bower Park will be getting a hand. Repaving Fish Rock Road. Limited. Sheriff, schools, Bower Park, public works / roads, transfer station. Roads, not much. Once a storm-felled tree was cleaned up after P&G did the minimal to get electricity going. Library, poor road maintenance. Funding for the cleanup of Bower Park. Nope. They partially fund South Coast Fire Department. I'm not sure of any other services that are covered by the county. General government services, law enforcement, and some Department of Transportation local road services. All services except VFD are sketchy at best and go to Ukiah. County roads, library, Bower Park. NA, no. Transit, very slow road maintenance. Roads, not great condition. County road maintenance, no, no. Should I pause there for a moment before I go on to any additional comments?
Well, so that was all the responses to one question, is that right?
Yes, all of that was in response to, can you identify any services or infrastructure that the County of Mendocino has provided to our coastal community?
And so that's roughly 80 some odd responses, okay.
I would say it's got to be quite a bit less than that. It's probably closer to 60, just glancing. A lot of people didn't answer that question.
That particular question, I get it. Yeah, okay.
Probably 60 some out of the 83 responses. I could figure out the exact number, but I don't know. Yeah, looks like somewhere between 60 and 70.
Mm-hmm. A lot of them were similar, and they hit it right on the head. Yeah.
Yeah. Notable ones. I was reading through them, so I may be missing them, but notable ones felt like roads, law enforcement, and Bower Park seemed to be sort of the biggest mentioned ones.
Mm-hmm.
Should I move on to the additional comments question?
Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, if the council is willing to take the couple minutes to see what the public's responses are, it would be great.
Any objections?
None. No, not that I'm hearing.
All right, okay. Here we go. So this question was just any additional comments. The Gualala and surrounding communities deserve their fair share of Mendocino County tax revenue to support basic services without raising taxes further or paying local taxes. Definitely welcome local community advocates. I am a part-time Gualala resident with plans to become a permanent resident within the next 5 to 10 years. I'm willing to pay taxes for the common welfare. I'm willing to pay people to do it. Somebody just said plenty. The area is unincorporated, so all taxes go back to general fund, which is not redistributed fairly or based on where funds come from. Incorporation isn't the answer. We need help having AT&T continue copper wire landline service. In an emergency, it is the only phone service that works. We need help from county in cutting down dead trees for fire mitigation. I think that there should be a place in Gualala where the bicyclists passing through the area have access to restrooms and drinking water. Most businesses have no public restroom sign posted, perhaps a spot south of the View restaurant or near the community center. Restrooms similar to those at the state park in Jenner would be ideal. Yes, there are costs to have them cleaned and pumped, but it's better than having people going behind the bushes to take care of business. Let's get moving on the quarter-century project of the streetscape. Eliminate the parking, put in the sidewalks that very few people will use, and crosswalks that most drivers and pedestrians will ignore. Get the highway patrol to more strictly enforce the posted speed limits and ticket drivers that like to see just how close to you they can follow you no matter that you are doing the speed limit. Coastal Commission should be scrapped and saved money invested in local services such as swimming pool. Gualala should be incorporated so we can have municipal services like sewage, broadband, and a fire department. We could also create local alternative services that make the sheriff unnecessary here. GMAC could and should be more effective. We should connect SR1 fiber optic cables to our houses for internet access that is safer and more secure from hacking. Water should be privatized. Support taxes only if it does not lead to gentrification that leads to pricing me out of house and home, leaving me homeless with nowhere safe to live. The Mendocino County roads in the Glennon subdivision are becoming gravel and should have been resurfaced 20 years ago. Consider creating a community services district to administer tax and assessment funds to support Bower Park and Ocean Ridge Park, including complete subvention of all South Coast assessments received by the MCRPD, safe pedestrian pathways to Bower Park, Gualala downtown streetscape landscaping, and a public restroom at downtown Gualala. It's unconscionable that there isn't a public restroom, quote, downtown. We are upset paying $4,500 a year for nothing. We never see the sheriff, roads get fixed occasionally, there's no county supervisor. If there's a problem, no one comes down. While I appreciate the effort to gather community input, I feel this survey is inadequate both in substance and method. I've designed surveys for global 1,000 companies, and they are difficult to design. E.g., there should be 5 choices instead of 2 or 3 for the above questions. And some questions are hard to answer because there's insufficient info, such as number 9. I'm not sure which one number 9 was, but I feel GMAC could be working much closer with MCOG and the BOS to assure services on the South Coast. Separately, I don't understand why you'd include the area 12 miles south on Sea Ranch in this survey, but not the 12-mile area up to Point Arena. In working on Streetscape, we looked at needs from Annapolis to Manchester. The ICO covers the area from Jenner to Elk. Gualala provides service for much more than Gualala, Anchor Bay, and the Sea Ranch. But I also feel that the Gualala town area, served by GMAC, should be the main focus of the survey. If you need assistance on this, I could help design a better survey and suggest better means of distribution. Otherwise, candidly, I'm afraid the results of this will be unreliable and probably misleading. I'm tired of supporting Ukiah and inland Mendocino County. Even the expectation of showing up for jury duty involves driving over the hazardous Mountain View Road to most likely be excused shortly after arriving. It would be nice to reinstate an occasional courthouse at the VFW in Point Arena, or for the convenience of local citizens. It was actively a courthouse for many years. More and reliable sheriff presence. I do think the sorry state of Bower Park is a heartbreak. I love that park, but we've never gotten anything from Ukiah relative to the taxes we pay. I'd like to see the park turned over to a local nonprofit and maintained by our own community. Stage a couple big community fundraisers at the park each year to pay for maintenance. Maybe the county could cover the park's insurance. Make a shared arrangement, sort of like the Coast Library. GMAC does not have real authority, quote, advisory only. Would prefer more of my current tax dollars be spent locally, while all sees very little support compared to the tax revenue paid. If the current local government is ineffective, I can't believe that more government would be any better. Dangerous road conditions on Pacific Woods due to curves, visual impairments, excessive speeds, and no shoulder in most locations. For pedestrians, it is even worse since I must share the lane with reckless vehicles when walking due to lack of adequate shoulder space for a path. I submitted a Caltrain survey over 2 years ago, but nothing happened. Road noise is also a major problem exacerbated by aggressive drivers. I expect to be hit and killed one day. It is simply a matter of time. Vacation rental is destroying homes for employed. More government is not the answer. Fair distribution of taxes is the answer. Bower Park is in the Mendocino Coast Recreation District, yet receives no taxes from that entity or, for the most part, from the county, which owns the park. No one attends MCRD meetings to complain about this. Also, Gualala needs a public bathroom. This is a basic human need. It should be located near the community center, open 24/7, well-lit and cleaned daily. The streetscape plan should be completed. GMAC has created only confusion around this issue, which has been decided. Crossing Highway 1 is not safe. No parking should be tolerated in the public right-of-way. Gualala needs a clean, safe, attractive pedestrian interface downtown. This is not rocket science. Public restroom urgently needed in Gualala. It is time to bring our tax money home to provide services to those who paid it. Recycling center? What would another local government look like? Mental health services? Senior center in Gualala. Live in Annapolis. No law enforcement. Parks are bad. Need more housing, more structure to our government to help plan and grow our community. Very concerned about current and future conditions of service. Gualala needs to incorporate. I think a board of directors would help our town. I'm especially concerned about Bower Park. The park has a lot of potential, but right now it's in such disrepair, no one can play tennis, play basketball, or make use of the little stage. Many people live near the park, and it's a shame we can't use it because it is in such disrepair. I remember in times past that all those facilities were being used. GMAC does what it can, but has no real power. Sea Ranch is a world unto itself, and I don't think concerns itself with Gualala and Anchor Bay other than to shop, etc. We really need public restrooms for visitors who now frequently pollute the landscape in Gualala River due to lack of facilities. This seems like a natural role for the community center. I am especially concerned about 1, diminishing water resources and water security, 2, deforestation in the Gualala River watershed, and 3, implementing the complete streetscape in Gualala without further delay. As a 30-year property owner in Collins Landing Road, the biggest infrastructure deficiency in our area is the lack of broadband internet services that cover all properties between Gualala and Point Arena. Only selected local efforts, the Sea Ranch and the Anchor Bay Trailer Park, have solved this problem. There's no good comprehensive solution. As a major contributor of taxes to the county, this Gualala Anchor Bay region receives, if you will, diddly squat in return. Unfair is not quite the right word. Whatever can be done to deliver back to our needful area is proportionally fair in regard to our tax base here would be both long overdue and greatly appreciated. Don't post leading questions. Bower Park should not be included with infrastructure and safety services. Bower Park just got $2 million. Use that. Downtown Gualala is in need of public restrooms. Gualala town plan is outdated and the streetscape plan is a joke. Gualala downtown needs a public service center supplying public toilets, sink, and trash recycling receptacles. Dumping is a tremendous problem along the coast, and options to do otherwise are severely limited. Such a center could be combined with local information and education kiosks, travelers orientation, and local business promotion. Number 3, unclear which and to what extent paid taxes should adequately fund business service. We are paying $4,500 a year for nothing. We never see a sheriff. Roads get fixed occasionally. There is no supervision. If there's a problem, nobody ever comes. Gualala sees very little support compared to the tax revenue paid. Improve water availability. Develop a water system to allow people and businesses to live and work here. Remove small buildings next to Surf Market and create a park. And that is the end.
Oh, well read, Henry.
Thank you, Henry.
Thanks. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to stop sharing unless anybody has anything else they wanted to see from what I already showed. Ooh, that was a lot.
It was a lot. Good reading.
Thanks.
Henry.
So where do we go from here?
Well, with the council's approval, I'd like to forward these results to our Board of Supervisors so they know the input from our community.
Do you want to accompany that with a letter, or how are you just going to package them up? Or
I think we will send an introductory letter and then include the results below that.
Don't you think the supervisors might want some kind of executive summary? I mean, I just can't imagine the supervisors reading all of that. I just cannot imagine that. They've got lots of other stuff to do.
Right.
We need to summarize it for them. Maybe a couple of quotes here and there, and that's it.
Well, I think I would agree with you, Don. I think, and that's what the introductory letter is basically summarizing, but I also think that they want to see the hard answers that the public has responded with. They can choose to look at it or not. I think I would rather provide as much information as we can to them. But I'll leave that up to the council on how they wish to present this.
I have a suggestion. That last list was really very good, but it could be reorganized. I mean, for instance, just the simplest thing, take all the no's and put them at the bottom and put like 20 no's, something like that. Reorganize.
Yeah, I agree, Melissa. And I think, like Henry said, there was a lot of repetitive answers dealing with road maintenance and Bower Park. So I think if we just make one line that Bower Park was referenced, the road conditions were a concern. We don't need to list every single one, but I think the comments, yeah, we can condense that so it is not repetitive.
I think we would need to condense them too. There's a lot of misinformation that people have that concerns me rather significantly. People have misapprehensions about what there is and what there isn't, and who's responsible for what, things like that. Just to some extent, in a community this small, it's almost appalling.
I'm pretty appalled, and I'm one of those people who says, "What does the county do? I don't know. Give me a list. I don't really know," which is pathetic.
Robert, looks like Tom wants to.
I didn't see his hand. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, it's interesting to me listening to all the comments. I think that's the most valuable part, and I do encourage you to send all the raw data in support of your letter. I think you could group some of the responses. I heard a lot of things in there about no bathrooms downtown, complete the streetscape project, support Bower Park, and the roads are awful, which I think everybody on the county board of supervisors is already aware of, having attended a lot of MCOG meetings. I agree with Dan's comment that it's kind of, I think you said appalling, Dan. I think I agree with you. Appalling, but not surprising, maybe, that people don't know what the county does. And maybe there's, and this is my background as a communicator, maybe there's a call hidden in there to do a better job by the county, by GMAC, by others, to let people know what's going on. I think it's a source of frustration to the county. You know, if you were sitting on the board of supervisors working your tail off every day, as our supervisor does, I think it'd be a little frustrating to hear that they don't do anything for us. They do an awful lot for us, and I think that gets lost in the shuffle. And people don't understand that they're busy in their daily lives. They don't know. They know what's missing, but they don't know what's being done. So I kind of see the glass as half full. Certainly, there are a lot of needs. I don't think anybody on the board of supervisors would say there isn't a lot of needs. But you know, and again, Mary referred to some of the critical issues about housing and homelessness and hunger in our county, which didn't make the list. That's kind of surprising. There's generally a lot of skepticism about government. We all know that. And I think we all own a piece of that if we work in government. I think I want to congratulate everybody who volunteers for GMAC for doing what they do. I want to thank everybody on the board of supervisors and county employment for doing what they can. But certainly there's a lot of things. I do think there's a valuable survey. I think you can consolidate some of the major topics in a summary letter, just saying the top 3 things we heard or the top 5 things we heard were these, and the underlying data is attached. But I congratulate you for doing this. It's a good effort. To be honest, I'm the one who wrote the comment about having done surveys for global 500 companies. And there are a lot of deficiencies in the survey, but there are in most surveys I see. Distribution of the survey, getting a proper sampling, those are all little pieces of science. But I think this is a good grassroots feedback mechanism that you should send to the county. And I think there's an opportunity here for GMAC to take action in your ongoing activities to express to the community what you are and aren't doing. Obviously, the comment about GMAC not doing anything about streetscape is kind of humorous to me. But I wish people knew what really was going on there. Anyway, thank you for doing this, and I think it's really interesting. I'm glad you shared this with the council.
All right, Tom, thanks for your comments. We're gonna always have some adversaries, we know that, but you know, I got a lot out of those additional comments that you just read, especially that section. It showed to me, I mean, reading between the lines, a kind of a cross section of our demographics here is what it kind of showed me. And I agree with whoever's been saying it, that we send all the data to the supervisors, let them go through it if they do. If they don't, they don't. But that's the proof in the pudding, is this is what people actually wrote. And including that executive letter, or however you guys mentioned that, the summary letter is a good idea too. So I appreciate Henry and Kevin putting this report together for us all to hear.
I like that idea.
I'd like to agree what you just said, Robert. I do want to thank Kevin and Henry for making the effort to collect all this data, this raw data that we now have. And if it's submitted to, you know, the Board of Supervisors with an appropriate cover letter, which highlights some of the major points that were made by multiple people, then I think that kind of information could get the widest reading within the Board of Supervisors, as opposed to, you know, the raw data, which, yeah, should be included, but I wouldn't count on any of them reading that.
I agree with that. Give them the whole book, but toss in the cliff notes as well.
Mm-hmm. What's surprising to me is that there's not that many comments about incorporation in all those comments, or the potential idea of incorporation with Gualala. So that might not you know, get the Board of Supervisors to think one way or the other.
I think that was. Go ahead, Melissa.
I have a feeling most people read that and did the same thing I did. What the hell would it mean for us to be incorporated? How would it change? How am I supposed to know? Next question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the, you know, we didn't have an open text question about that. Mm-hmm. I think the sort of the two questions that probably are a little more informative on that question are you willing to pay more taxes, assessments, or fees that would stay locally to improve the level of services and infrastructure in your community? And then
or
would you support and then
able.
What? Willing? Oh, sorry, did I not say?
Didn't say able. You just said willing.
Are you willing or able, excuse me, to pay more taxes, assessments, or fees that would stay locally or to improve the level of services and infrastructure in your community? And then, would you support creating a more local government in your coastal community if it returns a portion of the tax dollars you pay to support park safety services and infrastructure? So obviously neither of those is should we incorporate. Both of those are probably somewhat more useful than the just open text that didn't really direct people to answer that, I would think. I mean, how useful those are, I think, is still an open question, but that's what I would look at more than the open text. And to refresh, that was 68% yes on willing or able to pay more taxes, and 81% yes on creating a more local government.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert, I think what it best illustrates is that the community really has a buy-in to the future of Gualala and Anchor Bay, and they want to just get the message out that they care. and leave it to, and the intent of this survey really is just to let the Board of Supervisors know what the residents are thinking. And then it's up to the Board of Supervisors to prioritize Gualala, Anchor Bay, and all the other areas throughout the county. But we want to at least mention that, yes, our residents care and they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep our community beautiful and vibrant.
Yeah, I mean, like it's 83 people. It's certainly not going to be a representative sample. I mean, I think, Tom, your point on that is clear. Like in between distribution and who chooses to respond to something like this, like it's not 83 people out of the whole community is not does not capture the view of the population as a whole necessarily. It's more than we had going in, but if the supervisors would prefer to ignore it because it's 83 people and not necessarily representative, then they'll do that. If they want to take it, for the information that it contains, they'll do that. Yeah.
I think it's going to warm up the Board of Supervisors quite a bit as to what the local folks are thinking here. It doesn't, allude to incorporation directly, which is good, but it does say, hey, what are you doing with all the money we send you? I heard that in many of the comments. You're not taking care of a big portion of your county, the South Coast, and I've heard that for 38 years, that they forget about, we're the lost coast of the Mendocino coast, and yeah, sure, over the years there's been it takes decades to do things around here. I'm talking now about infrastructure projects. So when we got the sewer project to this community, which was terribly needed with raw sewage running on the highway, that was a Clean Water Act grant, to the tune of $9 million. $1 million was raised locally through an assessment district. And then you talk about the Gualala Utility Undergrounding Project. That was also a $7 million project, which the county helped us with, but the money really came from all the monies that PG&E customers had been paying over the years. A small portion always on your PG&E bill, and that's for undergrounding projects. Now we have one more project before us, the streetscape project, and that again is going to be a Caltrans funded thing primarily, with, of course, the county Mendocino Council of Governments and the county in essence kind of paying a pretty good portion of that too. So, but still, it leaves the big open question of, hey, what have you really, you county yourself, Board of Supervisors, with the budget money that you get from us, done for the South Coast?
Robert,
parks, whatever.
Robert, I want to sort of tag on to one thing you mentioned there, which was the undergrounding project, for the power lines in downtown Gualala. I will bet a significant sum of money, although I'm sure nobody will make this bet with me, that the reason downtown Gualala got turned on first, power-wise, was because the power lines were underground. And so there, we had a significant benefit from an infrastructure project.
Right. Great point, Don. I only, it's great you brought that up because, I mean, I'm only thinking about it in the big scheme of things here, but that significant weather event that we had, and say we still had everything above ground when it comes to, I mean, there were 74 poles in this small downtown area and over 6 miles of electrical and telephone wires that we would be a mess, I have a feeling, if those were still up.
Mm-hmm.
So good point. Thanks for bringing that up. So anyway, what's the next step? I mean, putting together this letter, Kevin and Henry, and running it by the council, or how are we going to do this from here on?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and work with Henry. We'll put together, and Dan, because he's on the committee as well. We'll put together. Are you? Oh, that's the park committee. Okay, Henry and I will put together a letter, and we will bring it back to the board or to the council at our February meeting, and council can weigh in on it, and then we will forward it to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. So, and as you all know, our February meeting is coming up pretty quick. So I don't know if you can do something by then, but you know, whatever you can do, show it to us all, and we'll take the next steps.
I think that since this is an official letter and it comes officially as this is our survey, et cetera, please pay attention that it should be moved and seconded that the letter be created and brought back to the February or the March meeting so that you can show in your minutes that the members approved that the letter be written.
Well, we could do that, or we could have them present us with a draft letter and then we could vote on it at that time. I see a hand up. Council, what do you think? And then we'll go to.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I think needs to be done, and this is sort of Brown Act type stuff, I believe, is that a draft letter, proposed draft letter, should be presented to the council, and we need to put it on the website, 72 hours beforehand, like anything else that we're, going to vote on. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it should happen, I think.
And then, as Mary suggested, we take a vote. Mm-hmm. Okay, Tom, you want to chime in?
Yeah, just a writing tip for whoever writes the letter. I think you should acknowledge in there. It will help your credibility if you say something like, to be sure, this was not a complete survey of every resident. It's not a scientific survey, but it's worth noting how many people mention some of the same things and lists like the top 5 things. And Henry, maybe you could figure out what were those top 5 things. The number of times people mention bathrooms was surprising to me, but it's something that I've often thought about in downtown, that it's just disgraceful for a tourist community that we don't have a place for people to go to the bathroom and relieve themselves.
Yeah.
I think the county's heard a lot about streetscape from us, but there's some other things there that they haven't heard much about. They've heard about Bower Park, thanks largely to Kevin and other members of the council who've spoken up about that. But I think it really helps to get it before the county supervisors to say, we took the survey and you might be interested to see what the top complaints are about the county, or how unaware the South Coast is that the county does things for the South Coast, and try not to be too critical of the county, but give them a shot in the arm and say, hey, these are the things that get some attention. And by the way, why don't you toot your own horn a little while, every once in a while, and show what you're doing? They don't have a lot of money to do publicity in the county. And that's one of the reasons that people don't know what the county does.
Yeah. No, I get. Go ahead, Melissa. Go ahead.
There are public toilets in Sunstrom Mall.
No, there's a sign there saying customers only.
Really?
Yeah.
Melissa and others, what we're talking about is something more public than a private development's restrooms. We're talking about, and we've talked about this for decades, something like you have down in Jenner. I had David Shaw, the owner of Breakers Inn. I met him. I happened to see him down in Jenner. We were both taking a break down there. This is what we need in Gualala. How many times has that been mentioned by Mary, by others that have been on this council over the years? Something like Point Arena has. I mean, here we are. I don't know what the anchor base situation is, but again, that probably falls under the private developer there too. But we do need something like that, and we've talked about it for a long time. So hopefully we can do it as part of the streetscape. Lighting is on something else we've talked about through streetscape, but we don't know if that'll become part of the plan or not. We just got to get something going on streetscape. But
it's required in the plan.
What's that? The lighting.
The lighting.
Yeah. And we haven't discussed anything in detail, but the restroom is mainly what I was referring to. But I'm sure Kevin has planned to do something regarding a disclaimer or something to the effect that You know, his goal was to get 100 responses or whatever he has been telling us, him and Henry. But this is what he was able to achieve, and he thought they'd still be interested in seeing this, the county. Were you waving your hand,
Yeah,
Melissa?
I think they'll be interested.
Melissa,
I have a comment about that toilet in Jenner. When I was working on getting my house built, having it moved up here, I drove from Walnut Creek up to here, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I learned all the toilets in between here and there. One of them is in Whole Foods in Petaluma, one's at a rest stop in Petaluma, and one is the one in Jenner. And another one is the one at Sea Ranch Lodge. Between Petaluma and Sea Ranch Lodge or home, I dropped by the one in Jenner maybe twice. And I didn't care how badly I had to go. I was not going to use that nasty, stinking, disgusting pit toilet.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to see that in Gualala. I'd rather see a solar powered, what is it? Where they combust. What's the word for that?
Composting toilet.
No, not composting, where it's burned.
Okay. Well,
but we can get into specifics at a later point, you guys.
We need to discuss this later in more detail. Yeah, but bottom line is, I think if you look at all these other places that have these public toilets, they're on public property. Where is the public property in Gualala where we could do this? I don't see it. So in my mind, the county needs to buy a small piece of property here in Gualala, downtown, and put up a toilet like was done in Point Arena. I don't think there's another solution.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're pretty far afield of the sort of action item here. And we have a lot of stuff left on the agenda. So I think we should probably boil it down to Kevin and I will put together a letter summarizing the data and attaching the anonymized raw data, and then bring that back to the council for approval. Kevin, I don't know if you feel like, and so the next meeting is in 2 weeks. Do you have any objection to us trying to turn that around for the next meeting?
I think we can do it.
Okay. So I think that needs, or I guess really we need to turn it around 72 hours before the next meeting, right? So that it can go on the website.
Yeah.
So so Don, will you be available to put it on the website if we get it to you, say, end of next week?
Yeah, well, I can put it on the website, as late as Monday.
Okay,
great.
Monday's a deadline for putting anything on the website, so you've got until Monday.
Okay,
we'll get it to
Thank you.
That's the 30th at 5 p.m. roughly.
Okay, great.
Great, you guys. Okay, we heard a very good report there. Thanks again. And should we move on to GCAP committee at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a meeting with Caltrans here recently, and that was back on December 7th, I want to say, somewhere in there, that the GCAP committee attended, that Tom with Save Gualala attended, that David Shapak with Redwood Coast Land Conservancy attended. We had the engineers from Caltrans visiting us in Gualala. We did a walkthrough in Gualala. And Karen Coonrod, the new, her position is project manager. The director was not here, whose name is Jamie Matoli, but we had a good walk through Gualala. And what we are now waiting for is for the presentation from Caltrans, and they should be doing that sometime in February now, of the new plan update. And we're hoping to receive that as a committee, as a GCAP committee for review. And then we hope that Caltrans will give us a larger presentation at the next GMAC meeting, whether that's in February already, we don't know. It might not be until March. But that's kind of the latest that I've been involved with on that. Anybody else that's wanting to add to that can surely do so. GCAP committee members first and then the audience. How's that? Melissa or Henry, do you have anything else you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add, but it was great getting to meet and see some of the people working on it. It gave it definitely more of a feeling that it was like a real thing that was going to happen, you know, in the foreseeable future, as opposed to sort of a theoretical thing that might happen eventually. That was, to me, sort of the thing that made it feel realist so far. So that was great.
Okay. Melissa?
Yeah, because sometimes it feels like it's not going to happen till we've reached the end of the world.
Well, they're saying 2025, so it's just down the road. Audience, Tom, David, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would. I just want to make the public aware of something that's going on and make the full council aware. On behalf of the City of Gualala, I wrote to Karen and suggested that she work with GMAC and the GCAP committee to do a preview of the plan that she's developing. We talked about it a lot during our walkthrough. And in her note to us, she said the proposed project is consistent with the alternatives presented in the draft environmental document, so there shouldn't be any surprises. That is a very refreshing turnaround for Caltrans. The document she's referring to goes back to 2019 when I was just after I joined the council, and included the core elements of our town plan. After that, that fell apart. And we went through 3 years of working very hard to get back to that environmental document. Sounds like we're on track to get back to it from the walkthrough and from this note. We're looking forward to seeing some more specifics about that. As Robert alluded to earlier, there's still a lot of questions, things like where's the speed feedback sign that we were promised for the north and south part of town? What about lighting? How will the crosswalks be illuminated to alert drivers? There's supposed to be flashing lights in the ground, we heard at one point. So we're looking through details like that. And I think it's kind of a lot to throw at the council at a GMAC meeting where you may have 3 hours of other stuff to talk about. So I thought it'd be better to go to the committee. And I invited Karen to work with GMAC. I encouraged Karen to work with GMAC to set up a committee meeting first to go over all those details, a special meeting, and then bring their recommendation and those and a more generalized proposal to the regular GMAC meeting. Of course, both meetings would be open to the public. And I think that would fulfill a lot of concern at Caltrans about making sure the public has a chance to weigh in on all this. To the fellow who commented in the survey that GMAC hasn't done anything on this, I just want to assure the community that GMAC has worked very, very hard on this. It's only in the last 3 years that Caltrans has been involved that it's been going back and forth again. But since 1995, even before GMAC existed, GMAC was actually created in part to help fulfill the vision of streetscape. It's been working towards that probably every month since. And I'm very glad that we're getting close to what we might think is a major hurdle in this project, and with completion in sight in 2025, 2026. It's in talking about returning dollars to the community. This has now grown to over a $10 million project. I think the community is going to be very happy with it. It preserves the charm of downtown Gualala. That's a priority. It reflects the environmental beauty of Gualala. And at the same time, it upgrades the town just as much as underground and the utilities are putting in sewers. It'll make it safer, more efficient, better for business, and more attractive to our visitors, much more friendly to our own pedestrians, seniors, kids, bicyclists, as well as people trying to make a left turn onto a road and finding a lot of congestion there. So keep the faith that things are going to happen. Melissa just asked, do the committee meetings have to be open to the public? No, Melissa, I don't think they really do, but if I think somebody wants to come from the public and sit in a committee meeting, it's a darn good idea. I think if you're having a special meeting, you might even want to announce it and get people from the community out there to know that GMAC's doing this and to hear what the latest plan is.
I really prefer the committee meeting done in private so that we have a chance to really get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on, and then have it presented at the public meeting and at the regular GMAC meeting, and then the public can. Otherwise, I'm afraid
that's entirely up to the committee members, and I'm not going to say anything more about that than I have, but I made it very clear in the letter to Karen that it's up to the committee members where and when and how that meeting takes place. So you and Robert and Henry can decide that. I want the council to be aware that that's going on in the background so that it doesn't seem like a surprise when it comes to the main council meeting.
Right. We discussed that in length, Tom and I, because we did that a lot for 3 years with Caltrans, where, hey, present it to us first so we can disseminate it, so we can digest it, so we can, debrief the whole thing. And so that's what Tom is so great at writing, that he put together a nice letter to suggest that to Caltrans. Now, I'm always of the opinion that we got to be as transparent as possible. So that's why I think, Melissa, we need to open those meetings up to anybody that wants to attend. I mean, it's not an official GMAC meeting, it's a committee meeting or a subcommittee meeting.
It's a committee meeting, so we can do that privately so that we can understand what's going on before we present it to the public.
So let's talk about that between us 3 subcommittee members, okay?
Okay.
That part, okay.
Can I just note for the public's sake, what the requirements are under the Brown Act. In GMAC, if a majority of the council meets for anything, it has to be publicly announced 72 hours before the meeting. Our committee for Streetscape is 3 members. It's a minority of the council. It's not a majority. And under state law and common practice for the County Board of Supervisors or the state legislature or Congress or anybody you want to look at, these kind of meetings go on all the time, what Melissa's talking about. They're work sessions. They're nitty gritty, they roll up your sleeves, apply the elbow grease, and really go through a lot of the details. So there's merit to both proposals. I don't think that, knowing this council, I don't think anybody would ever be turned away from a meeting like that. But the committee would rule the meeting, and the amount of discussion at the meeting would be limited by the committee. And that's fair. I think that's the way to do it one way or the other.
So the majority is based upon the 7-member board that we are. Okay. And we're a 3-person subcommittee. So yeah, Henry and Melissa will get together and discuss that. Anybody else like to comment on this? David, are you still in the audience? Anybody else from the council?
I can offer briefly that GMAC, the MCOG is aware of the award, the ATP award, and they're looking forward to Caltrans moving on with the project. It's been a long, hard road to get to ATP approval. I think it's as long as it's taken, the project has arrived at a fortuitous time in the economy and then the state of California's funding condition. So in some ways, it was a perfect storm, even though it's been a long, difficult road to get to the money. But Caltrans committed. They have a schedule, and with money and schedule, that means there's priority setting. So District 1 will be moving forward. I'm glad to see that members here are making sure and keeping contact with Ms. Coonrod and her colleagues, just to let them know that the community's attention is directed toward them. So that's what it takes to keep things going.
And I'll just mention, if you think Streetscape's taken a long time, I remember a comment by one of the members of MCOG MCOG is the Mendocino Council of Governments, and they assign all the transportation projects for folks who don't know it. It's mainly made up of county supervisors. And they drive the bus on this with the help of a private agency, Dow Associates. And one of the members of MCOG told me that she was from the east side of the county, where there had been a number of fatalities along a stretch of road. And they were just trying to get a freaking sidewalk, and it took over 25 years. So it's, these kinds of projects take a really, really long time to get through government, all the regulations, all the requirements, hearing the public comments, having public hearings, going through design progressions. And Dave can attest to this too. I know he's very familiar with this. I'm just very gratified that we're very close to this now, and we just need to nail this down and get this to happen. So I think we're getting almost there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks all for your comments. To me personally, it feels like we're back where we were in 2019 when they presented us with the environmental document. And I was reviewing that environmental document and this past week, and it just makes a whole lot of sense. It's just that we lost a couple, 3-4 years. But again, as the new project manager or Jamie Matolio says, you have to go through this whole process. You just alluded to it too, Tom. It takes decades. It takes a long time. So I'm just really thrilled that we're at this point, and we got to continue to baby it through and oversee it. And in 2025, we'll be here before we know it. And hopefully by 2026, we'll all be enjoying it. So, okay, that's our GCAP committee for tonight. Committee report for tonight. Thanks again. Anything, Don, on the electric vehicle charging station or from that committee? That's actually Don and
yeah,
Henry.
I actually had a question about that. Am I on that committee? I see I'm listed on the agenda. I don't remember when that happened, but maybe I have just forgotten something from the December meeting.
Either.
I don't remember.
Congratulations, Henry.
If Henry wants to be, that's fine with me.
No. I think I might have sort of accidentally wound up on 2 committees.
You've got enough to do, right, Henry?
Well, I think I also
volunteered while you were out of town.
I don't remember being on the economic development one either, though that I could talk myself into that one a little bit more. That maybe I volunteered for that. I was going to review.
You went out of town and you got volunteered.
That's right.
Yeah, this is what happens. Don't miss a meeting.
Well, then, Don, what do you have for us?
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any, positive, firm development moving forward here. Not yet. I mean, the California Energy Commission they produced a document that I reviewed, that goes over basically sort of their whole plan for extending the infrastructure for electric vehicle charging in the state, largely, using both federal monies, which is from the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure portion of the bill that was passed last year. Let's see, I got distracted by that noise, but in the meantime, anyway, there's nothing in that document regarding imminent grant offerings. However, they certainly alluded to it that's what's coming. The other curious thing that's happening, apparently MCOG has put out requests for sites in the Ukiah Redwood Valley area for EV charging stations. And I was kind of curious why, there was no mention of the South Coast in this. So I fired off an email, to Janet Orth, but she's out of town, I guess, for a couple of weeks. So I haven't heard back from her, but I'm sure I will. So I'll let you know what happens with that. But So for the moment, I don't have anything to report back in terms of imminent grant opportunities. However, I was in contact via email with a local business owner who expressed an interest in being a site for an EV charging, public EV charging station. So in fact, there's also another local business owner, actually two more. So I have three potential local business owners at this point. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to, prematurely commit anybody or whatever. But it's encouraging that at least three local business owners have expressed an interest now in being a site for EV charging.
Oh boy, that's great news. Okay. Well, great, Don. Thanks for that.
Yeah, bottom line is we have to wait for grant opportunities to pop up for this area, and then I'll work with these local businesses to the extent that makes sense for me, to make them aware of it if they don't become aware of it themselves, and then hopefully they can proceed.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Drop down to E, Telecommunications Committee. That is Don and Henry. Anything on that?
Yeah. I forgot to check the YouTube views. Sorry about that. So I don't have that information to give you. And as far as the website, I was hoping that the transfer would work with the free service, but it didn't work. So we're gonna have to pay, I think it's $150 for a more technical approach to transferring the website to our new host. Hopefully, I can have this done, maybe not in 2 weeks, but certainly within the month of February at some point. I say 2 weeks because that's the next GMAC meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think there's a problem with paying $150 for this service?
I don't think so. I think in the past when we've submitted these kind of expenses to the county, they've paid for it. And so it's just a matter of doing so.
Yeah, I did shrink down the website size significantly, so that was not the issue. There's some other technical issues related to our website that prevented this free migration service from working.
And that was to Bluehost, or to who was that?
There's Bluehost, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they provide a little migration tool that I installed, on our website as a utility, as a plugin, basically, and that's what we attempted. And it actually looked like it was working. I mean, it migrated the site, but then Bluehost said, we can't bring it up. There's some problems. There was a problem with the migration. And if there's a problem with the migration, then that's it. And there's no multiple attempts with the free service. Then you got to go to the next step, which is a paid $150 migration service. Which, when you think about it, I mean, it's not an unreasonable expense. $150. What do you think, Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I've never worked with Bluehost. It's not a surprise. I mean, migrating from one architecture to another it would be nice if the tool worked. I'm not at all surprised that it doesn't. There can be any number of little differences that aren't automatically migratable. It's not an easy thing to write as an automated service. So if they're actually going to so this is somebody on their staff does the migration.
Exactly, yeah.
And you hand over credentials, or no, it's just the backed up files, or yeah. I mean,
Probably will have to.
$150 does not sound at all unreasonable to me as a price for them to charge for that service. What I guess the question I would want to ask is do they guarantee that they can actually do the migration for $150, or is there the possibility that they take the 150 and then it still doesn't work? And what happens then?
I'll ask them about that, but
yeah,
I suspect because they want you on there.
Yeah, I assume they guarantee it.
So they want it to work.
That would be the only question I would want to ask, but that sounds like a totally reasonable number for them to ask for.
There may be some issues related to maintenance of our website that hasn't been done in years. Yeah. Whatever, it's causing some hiccups in the free migration process. So, they have to dig in and look deeper, see what's going on. So
yeah.
Okay, well, I'll proceed with moving ahead with that paid migration service then.
Okay, and then what was this part of the agenda? Further reach update. Is that anything?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Okay, that was on there from, I guess, at press time. Okay, well then let's move on. What are we getting to be on time? Nobody mentioned anything on time. 8:51. Wow. Okay, Water Ad Hoc Committee. We did not meet this past month. Melissa, Don, and I, as we've all seen, we've had a lot of rain come down. So that to me means continued missed opportunities for, high flow water capture for use in low times and when there's low flow. And so I'm just really hopeful that we as a committee can somehow get us along further with our local privately owned water company to develop something where we can capture water. That seems to be what everybody else does. What Sea Ranch did way back when they put in their reservoir. So, they collected a lot of water now during this high flow time. And we got to get to that point to be able to resolve some of our basic water needs around here, especially looking into the future. Melissa, Don, I don't know what else I can update us on this at the moment without having met.
No, but the point about water storage, I think is critical. It's critical for the whole state. There have been articles in national newspapers about how this storm it resulted in trillions of gallons of water flowing out to sea. Trillions. I mean, just look at the massive flow of the Gualala River. I mean, a massive amount of water just went out to sea, fresh water. And we had no way to capture any of it. So yeah, that's a very pressing problem, but it's part and parcel of adapting to climate change. And it's not going to be cheap. This requires, again, infrastructure investment. Lots of money. That's what it's going to take. And I hope people understand that.
Melissa, you still with us? Is she muted? Is she
you're muted, Melissa.
That is.
Hey, what you were just saying. Sorry, my iPad fell over. People understand, but what people understand is that they're talking about spending lots of money. What people don't understand is if they don't spend the money, the results will be the extinction of the human race. People don't want to say that. People don't want to go that far. People want to say, oh, but no, it's not that bad. Humanity can't destroy themselves with pollution. People don't understand. People aren't paying attention. There's a lot more at stake.
Okay, that's our update for tonight on the Water Ad Hoc Committee, okay? Everybody, we'll see if we can't meet here in the near future and see what we can come up with for the council.
But we definitely need water retention for our own use. Even if we never expand, we're going to need water retention if we're going to stay here and not have the whole city dry out and blow away.
Exactly, just for our existing population, for sustaining ourselves as a community, for our businesses, our tourism, what we depend on around here. Yeah, I agree.
Right, that's to sustain the status quo.
Yeah.
We have to have water containment.
Yeah, and we're not even talking growth. I know that. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, we're almost there. We are to new business, and we added an item here, I believe, or one item with Mary. So let's start with the first item: annual discussion and election of officers, chair, vice chair, and treasurer. We have Dan's name attached to this, Dan Lewis, but I thought about it just addressing this item, before we go on to Dan here, if you don't mind. So I wanted to mention that over the past several years, we've had little, if any, annual discussion or election of officers. At times, however, the council has held organizational meetings, usually at the beginning of a calendar year, and occupying the officer positions has been prioritized, as well as getting additional council members. And we've always done that as per our GMAC bylaws and on an as-needed basis. Back in August, September of 22, I think it was, Kevin Evans volunteered to fill the vacant needed vice chair role and has done so admirably. For quite some time now, the role of treasurer has been filled by myself. So there are some inherent duties that go along with this officer position. And it's a role that I could probably use some help with, as I'm willing to attest to. And but there haven't been any takers in the past. So what do we do about this? I'll defer to Dan, maybe, since he's on the agenda on this, for further comment.
Okay, I'm unmuted. To be perfectly honest, I'd completely forgotten that I got volunteered for this.
Did you?
And I haven't actually looked into it, but given what Robert just said, and that it is probably appropriate time to reassess where we're at with the offices that we have. And am I correct in assuming, Robert, that those are the only three actual officers, if you will?
Right.
Chair, vice chair, treasurer.
Correct.
So, is it your wish, Henry? Yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to say that the bylaws are specific on this, and it's that the council can reorganize itself as needed due to the departure of an existing officer, or if so requested by a 2/3 vote of the remaining members. And that, so, I mean, I guess the last time there was a treasurer. Well, so Robert, are you sort of acting treasurer, or are you a treasurer?
I have been, because there's been nobody else that wanted to take on the position. So yeah, ever since who was it, Lloyd Chasey resigned back in 2010, I've kind of taken, no, 2020 I think it was. I've taken it on. Sure.
But you're an acting treasurer, not a
acting treasurer, correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think at this point,
yeah.
Well, go ahead, Dan. Anyway, I just wanted to read that out in case that was worthwhile.
Okay, so at this point, we don't have a treasurer, an actual treasurer.
Yeah. And
it sounds to me like Robert is interested in not being acting treasurer. Am I correct, Robert?
Well, if somebody would be willing to take that on, I would be appreciative. Okay, I mean, it is an additional responsibility, but it's something that we should probably vote on. And it would be nice if somebody stepped forward and would volunteer to take the position. That would be great.
Well, Robert, could you explain exactly how much time and effort it requires so that people are aware of
Why,
that?
sure. It involves interacting with the county auditor or whatever her exact position is, getting the bills that we incur, and one of them is this 179 that I haven't yet submitted because I just haven't taken the time to do it. You know, the one on the MCN bill that we've been talking about for a month and a half, 2 months. Making sure that Mary gets paid, getting her invoice, which we'll be handling here later on, to the county, following up with the county to make sure they've received it. And those basic things, those few expenses that we do incur would be involved with the duties and position of treasurer.
So we don't have accounts or anything like that we need to keep track of?
Not anymore like we used to, no.
All right. And do we need a 2/3, Henry? Do we need a 2/3 vote to put somebody into an office?
It's not entirely clear, but I believe we have the author of the bylaws waving his hand, so I am interested in his take on that.
Great, thanks, Tom. Chime in.
Kevin, Henry, you did a great job earlier of explaining the bylaw, and thank you for that. It's good to know people actually do read it. We had quite a discussion about selection of officers when we last revised the bylaws. And as you may know, some other agencies just rotate jobs through the council or board. We don't do that. We are lucky to have Robert volunteer on a long-term basis as chairman, and given his experience of the infrastructure of the city or in the town, it's been a real benefit to us. And I don't think people really, I mean, I was vice chair for a few years under Robert, and I don't think people really have a clue how much work Robert does for GMAC. I know I was putting in about 20, 25 hours a week as vice chair, and Robert was outdoing me. It's a lot of work. So for him to take on the treasurer job in addition to that was just brave. But I do think it's time that we fulfill that you, excuse me, appoint a new treasurer. You can do it with a council vote. It's just a simple majority to do that. To remove somebody from office would require a 2/3 vote, and that's in keeping with, I think we followed the national example on that you need a 2/3 majority. Otherwise, some faction in the council may scheme to get around somebody, and that was the idea of making that a little bit more of a hurdle. You know, getting people to serve on GMAC is hard. Getting people to take on these officers' jobs is harder. And Robert's dedication and generosity of his time is not to be underappreciated. So yes, you can do it with a simple majority vote. But I think first you probably need a volunteer.
Well, yeah,
unless you want Robert to appoint somebody.
We can't just vote somebody in against their will.
Yeah, does it take, can we with a 2/3 vote conscript somebody would be the next question.
That's what kind of I was alluding towards, is who would like to volunteer, and then can we take a vote on that? That was like kind of hoping for.
Well, I would say, who put this on the agenda, Dan?
Dan.
No, seriously, anybody who wants to serve as treasurer.
I asked a question, and I was requested by somebody to see if we couldn't make this happen. So,
okay.
All right. Is anybody excited about being treasurer? That would be the first question. Don't all speak at once.
It's rewarding, but would you be willing to be the new treasurer, Dan?
Well, absent anybody else jumping up as the juniorest guy out here, you know, I'd put myself last, but if nobody else is willing to jump up there, I'll try and take it on. If you'll meet with me and tell me what it is I need to do and who I need to talk to and who needs to be beat about the head and shoulders to get our bills paid.
I'd be happy to do that, Dan, with you.
All right.
Okay.
I would.
I'll nominate Dan to take over treasury.
I second that.
Motion.
Don seconds.
Yeah,
that.
we probably need a formal motion. Is that right? Yeah, I'll move that Dan be appointed the new treasurer for the GMAC.
I'll second that motion because the finances were in an empty coffee can with a lid and it was loose change. You could trust me with it. Beyond that, don't do it. Mary would starve.
Well, we got to keep Mary fed.
Should we take a vote on it then? I mean, if we first made a motion and seconded that.
We've got a motion and a second.
There's a motion on the floor.
Okay. What's that?
I just said there's a motion on the floor. We need to vote.
And we seconded it. Who was the second? You were, right?
Melissa seconded.
Melissa did. Okay, then let's vote. Melissa.
Aye.
Dan.
Recuse.
Okay.
You can vote for yourself. The president of the United States can vote for himself.
Henry.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
And myself. Aye. Okay, then we'll.
Congratulations, Dan.
Congratulations.
And good luck.
Yeah, there will be a condolences party later.
We will get together on that. Okay, Dan?
Yeah, we will.
So what else should we address? Any further discussion on that? I personally, I'm interested in continuing on as the chair of the council. With Kevin having just settled into the vice chair role, I look forward to our ongoing working relationship as well as with the other council members and committees. So Kevin, you willing to go forward with being vice chairman? I didn't hear.
Actually, if anyone has a burning desire to be vice chair, I have no problem with handing that off. As Tom would probably allude to, you really get a good understanding of what GMAC's all about. You work with the different entities. So if there's anyone else who has a burning desire to be vice chair, I'm willing to step back and allow someone else to serve in that position.
I have a 2-year-old. I have enough co-chairmanship going on in my own household.
I've been there, done that.
I'd like to see the continuity continue with you, Kevin, and I'm ready to go to work on lots of things still in our futures here. So if you're willing to, I'm willing to, and if anybody else wants to take over an officer role, let us know, okay?
Well, I'll just say thank you both, and now all three, for volunteering to do this work. I know, there's enough sort of small work that being a council member involves. Being an officer seems to be much more. So I really do appreciate you all doing it.
I appreciate it very much. We should double their pay.
Well, please do.
2 times 0 is still 0, right?
My math's still that good.
We got to pass that through Dan. See if he'll sign off on it.
Yeah, I signed the checks. Wait, there are no checks.
You're great volunteers, I tell you.
Dan, can we raise the debt limit?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we've covered that agenda item. Anything else on that?
Not by me.
Then let's get together sometime, Dan, and we'll work on that. Maybe, hopefully, before the next meeting. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Item 2 was starting in-person meetings again, and we haven't discussed that any further. I'm still in favor of continuing the way we're doing. It seems to work real well. We said at the last time we met or talked about this last month's meeting, I think it was, that we'd at least go through the winter season, but we should keep an open mind about this. But it seems to work so well doing it by Zoom. Unless I hear from the other council members that you might really want to have a change again, I just as well keep doing what we're doing.
The weekly death average is close to 550 today from COVID. No in-person meetings.
I can remember when it was 1,000. Is that starting up again?
It's starting up again.
It was about 300. It was about 300 for a long time. And with this new strain that's going around, it's gone back up into the 500 range. Well, this is quite right.
Today it was about 550. It was about 540. I think 541 is what it was, according to the Guardian. The 7-day daily, the average.
You know, and I think it's an opportunity to mention to the community to be careful about this. When COVID first came out, everybody was alarmed about it. And we had 2 town meetings that GMAC put on, and we had on Zoom. And they were very widely attended. They're still on our YouTube channel. But people have forgotten. People have gotten lax. And Melissa and I were talking about this yesterday. You know, if a jumbo jet crashed every day and killed 250 people, people would be shocked. But now 500 people, like 2 jumbo jets a day going down fully loaded. And people are walking around without masks and not getting their shots. It's foolish. It's foolhardy, and it's hurting us. So, you know, personally, I'll just say I'd like to see everybody wearing masks. I feel, being in a more urban area now, I feel very threatened whenever I walk into a supermarket. And I've gone back to wearing my N95 mask all the time.
I'm afraid people don't understand the ramifications of this disease. They think, I feel fine, so I'm not going to get anybody sick. There are people who are carrying enough germs to make the people around them sick who have no symptoms, but they'll give those germs to someone who doesn't have it and who could die of it. As with 550 people a day dying, that is what's happening. People are getting sick from people who have no symptoms. And so even if you don't have symptoms, you need to be wearing your mask to protect other people. Masks, sign of caring. They're saying, I want you to stay alive, as well as I want me to be alive. I want to take care of you as well.
No, I think it's all well taken, you guys. I think we got to set an example. I think we don't want to become lackadaisical. And I think we are doing just fine the way we are having our meetings. And it's up to you guys if you want to keep it on the agenda, but I'm fine with keeping on. This is a very good venue, in my opinion. It actually seems to invite more people to attend our meetings than the other way around. I can remember years and years of where we had the community center open and wished everybody would come to our meetings, and one or two showed up. And what a hassle it became with the community center just to open and close the doors constantly. I remember those years. So I'm going, well, why wouldn't we want to keep doing Zoom if we can get better attendance or possibly get better attendance? So that's how I feel about it. But
same.
It's up to the council whether to keep this on the agenda.
There's a legal element to this too. The governor issued an order authorizing it. And we're perfect. The GMAC is perfectly well suited to continue to meet virtually. If at some point there was an order that you had to have physical meetings for some reason, I talked to the county council about that when I was on the council, and he said you'd have to have at least one person in the public session to meet with members of the public who don't have access to computers, but everybody else could still meet virtually if the council wanted to do that. So that was the status if you wanted to have a virtual meeting. technologically, Don and I talked about this a couple of years ago. What happens if we have to go back to virtual meetings, to real meetings? And it would be kind of a hassle to have both virtual and physical meetings, because are you going to be on the computer or are you going to be just talking in a room? And how are people in other places going to hear you if you're just talking in a room? So stay the course, I say.
Yeah, I say keep
Robert,
it off.
Can I point out something here, that it's getting late, and we could talk about this COVID thing, you know, till the cows come home. Right. But I don't think we need to. I think there's no compelling reason to stop doing Zoom. Let's move on.
Okay.
Well, I say,
Melissa, real quick, and then we'll go to continue.
I'd like to say that we should take it off the agenda. Don't have it on it constantly, and don't put it on the agenda unless someone says, "Hey, I think we should talk about it next meeting," and then next meeting we put it on the agenda. So, but for now, take it off.
Okay. Mary, let's take it off from now on until further notice. Okay, is that okay with everybody?
No problem.
Yes.
No problem.
Okay. Then we added a third item to this new business, and that was the situation that Mary told us about with the closing of the Point Arena Food Bank at the Senior Center in Point Arena, right?
Yeah.
And moving it to Ukiah. Would you like to talk about that some more?
I just heard about it yesterday. At the Action Network board meeting. Our director, Thais Mazur, had called about food during this event, this last rain event, the 9 days when everyone was out of electricity. Action Network served 60-some families with food and vouchers, gas vouchers, and food vouchers and other. They produced hot meals, etc. during this time, and the Senior Citizen Center said, "Well, that's just fine. We'll send over some food, but we're closing. It's going to Ukiah," and of course, all of the people who depend upon Point Arena and Gualala for a food bank, this community, including the Sea Ranch, so you can see where it lies, is 80% poverty level. Right. And that means there are a lot of people in this community who are food poor and who go to bed hungry. And they need a food bank. They need the service of the Point Arena Senior Center Food Bank, and they're not going to get it. It's going over to Ukiah, and Ukiah already has several food banks. I don't know why it's going there, but it's a major concern to this community, and I hope that GMAC can write a letter to Supervisor Williams saying, "Hey, look, you know, you're overlooking our community. The coastal community is a part of Mendocino County, and you're not serving us by taking this away." And of course, the survey, 80-some% of the people said, you know, the county's doing nothing for us. Of course, Mr. Murphy pointed out, we are not aware of what the county does, and that's probably very true. But a lot of people here feel they are not getting a thing from the county, and they're paying $4,000 or $5,000 in property taxes to get zero back, and now the food bank is disappearing. So that's one more thing that's being extracted from this community.
Okay, so we need to write a letter, and who can do that? Or Mary, I mean, I know you've got a lot to do for us in your administrative capacity, but could you or somebody else help Mary or help us with writing a letter that knows a little bit more about the subject matter?
Robert?
Yeah.
If I could chime in here real quick, and I appreciate Mary's report to us, but I really think that it's probably in our best interest to do some vetting of this and fact checking before we write a letter, because there may be also some, things that are happening that we don't know about. So rather than go out on a line and write a letter to the county saying they're pulling services, I think we need to really contact them, and we really need to do some research before we submit a letter.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Can we do a little research between now and our February meeting on this? Who would do that?
I think the key is to contact the agencies that are involved, and that would be the coastal seniors, contact the food bank, contact the county, and find out exactly what's happening, because I'm really in the dark. This is the first I've heard of it.
Okay.
So I would hate to write a letter saying that it's a problem if we don't have the full story.
I agree. Dan, what did you want to say?
I have a question. Who actually operates this food bank? And the reason I ask that is Rhonda and I have volunteered at food bank before in Sacramento, and they're run by private nonprofits, not by the government in any way, shape, or form. They get donations of food from grocery stores and from other farmers and sources, and they distribute it to people at their facilities. And is the county actually operating these food banks, Mary?
I do not know. I'm sorry. I do not know. I do know that it is supported by the food bank up in Fort Bragg that brings food down, as well as community members who donate to it, just as the Gualala food bank has donations from the public and the community, as well as from the Fort Bragg food bank. And I don't know if it's the Fort Bragg food bank that's moving it, or whether it's the county that's moving it, or whatever. And I really feel that Mr. Evans' idea of fact checking and finding out just exactly what's going on is a really good idea. But I also think that it should be done, because if we lose it, it's something that is going to really, really put a lot of people in distress.
I have a question. Would it be not a presumption to say that the vast majority who need to visit food banks wouldn't be able to get to Ukiah?
That's totally true.
Well,
that most people couldn't get there. You're pretty much true. That's difficult for them to get over there. It's difficult for any of us to get over there, really.
I've never been, and I need to. I need to go to Fort Bragg. It's too far away.
So Robert, I'll be happy to. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just looking at foodbank.org, which is the Fort Bragg Food Bank site, is the Mendocino Food and Nutrition Program. Let me just read this for you. The Commodity Supplemental Food Program provides 30 to 40 pound box of nutritious food monthly for income eligible seniors age 60 and older. CSFP senior box services are currently provided in Fort Bragg, Leggett, Laytonville, Willits, Ukiah, Anderson Valley, Point Arena, and Gualala. Now, I donate to a few charities along the coast, and as I recall, they also provide food to some of the other agencies in the South Coast, I think Coastal Seniors. And I seem to remember the Baptist Church also has a food bank, and I don't know who provides the food, but it may come from the Fort Bragg Food Bank. So I do think it needs some vetting. I would suggest calling the Fort Bragg Food Bank or Coastal Seniors and asking them about that, just to get some information. Yeah, it's a very, there's a big need. And if it's true that they're closing the food bank in Gualala or Point Arena, that would be a very, very bad thing. Yeah. But I don't think, I think also something else I saw here is the funding sources. And one of the funding sources was Mendocino Social Services. but there's also a number of other major funding organizations, and they also take a lot of donations from the community. So very worthwhile group. Just they're doing God's work there.
Thanks for looking that up.
Coastal Seniors does list Point Arena Food Bank as one of their services, and they include a phone number to call for information about it.
Yeah, what do you say?
Happy. Here, I'll put that in the chat.
Hey, Kevin,
Yeah,
I just heard something from Tom, and I'd be willing to work with you on that. The thing that I always remember in my past here in Gualala is that the Baptist Church acted as a food bank. I do remember that, Tom, and I know the pastor, the pastor up there. What's his name again? Baker, James Baker. We could go talk to him, Kevin, if you wanted, and see.
I don't have a key. I don't have a keyboard, but if I could just give you the number, it's 707-964-9404.
Whose number is that?
That's the Fort Bragg Food Bank, 964-9404. Or you could call Coastal Seniors, and I'm sure they'd help you out too.
Yeah, and I just put the Coastal Seniors phone number in the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay, well, then let's
the Baptist Church and the Episcopal Lutheran Mission are the two church entities that run the Gualala Food Bank, and they're open once every 2 weeks. So this Friday will be the week in which they will distribute food. And Jason Baker is the pastor for the Baptist Church, and they do hand out the food at the Baptist Church because the Episcopal Lutheran does not have a facility to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this has all been good discussion on this, and thanks for bringing that up, Mary, and having us get it on the agenda, because this is something we should do. And Kevin and I, maybe we can get together, and or Kevin, you can check it out between now and next month's meeting, and we'll see if we can take some action on this. Okay.
Sounds good.
In the interest of moving forward and completing our meeting, we have what next? Okay, the two CDPs. Now, these are relatively simple CDPs. They're both revisions, number 1 and 2. It's just we you know, I want to say this. In the past, Mary and I, we've always waited for mail or received mail from the county when there was a CDP, a use permit, a boundary line adjustment, whatever it may have been that the county wanted us to look at. In the past years, we've kind of taken that on ourselves. We've looked at the county website, planning and building website, and we see things that come up in the Gualala area, and we kind of have taken it on ourselves to handle those things, review them, whatever. So I think in there might be a little bit of a short circuit going on there with regards to some of the CDPs we've been handling lately. But anyway, we should at least talk about these items that are occurring in our jurisdictional area, and we should at least acknowledge them and review them to some degree, I think. So as I said, these first two, the first one you see is search for and establish water source, then build residence. Well, I see this is a revision, so somebody should look into this one just to see what it's all about and come back to the council with some review on it. And the other one is the Redwood Coast Wellness Center. That's RCRC up there, correct? One should just review that and see what that one's all about. So could we have some volunteers on that? I'm always willing to step in on any one of these if we don't have any volunteers or a second volunteer on each one.
Robert, I'll go and volunteer for the RCRC one.
Oh, great.
Wellness.
Okay, Kevin, that's a revision. That's a use permit to build the pavilion. Okay. Who else would like to help Kevin on that? Since it's up on the ridge next to Bauer Park, maybe.
I'll take it.
Okay. Okay, since you walked it, okay, Dan, great. So that one's taken care of. How about the May CDP up on Fish Rock? It's just a matter of they're going to be doing they're looking to do an exploratory well, I believe. But I'm happy to handle that if somebody else wants to go to Fish Rock. I live close to there.
I'm happy to jump in.
Okay.
Oh, or Don, were you about to volunteer? Because I'll happily let you do it.
I would if unless you want it.
No. Again, I have a 2-year-old.
There's 2 more. Okay, Dawn helps me on that one. Okay. Then we have the other 2 that I had edited, or that we edited them agenda on. That was the CDP 2022-0041 beer Anson. Who would like to help on that one?
Sorry, what was this? Am I looking at an old agenda?
No, these are the 2 that we edited the agenda and we added these other 2 CDPs.
Oh, gotcha. That was the okay. Sorry, the thing prior.
Let me pull it out and I'll read it to you guys. Beer Ensign is the name. Beer and then Ensign on the end of their name. I had it in front of me just a minute ago, but all the shuffling going on here. Beer Ensign. I think it was to establish water again, but one moment. Wellness Center. Healer. No, I'm not seeing it. Revised. We got those 2. Okay, here it is. Coastal development permit to allow 2 test well locations on an undeveloped parcel. That's all it is, categorically exempt. This is located Havens Neck Drive, if you know where that is.
Say that one more time.
Havens Neck Drive, just maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles north of Anchor Bay on the west side.
Sure.
Okay.
From Kevin's house.
Okay, so I've got Henry on that one, and who else? Maybe Dan?
I'll be happy to help Henry because it's so far from my house.
Right, you can walk there, Kevin. Okay. Henry and Kevin, great. And then we got the last one, which is Beeler, I think that's pronounced Behler. That one's a little bit more involved. That one is a standard coastal development permit for improvements to a single family residence, window and door replacement, siding replacement, and paint and wooden deck replacement. Project also includes mitigation for previously moved dead trees. That's just a little bit beyond where the old white schoolhouse is, north of Fish Rock Road. It's on the left-hand side on the sharp turn there, on the oceanfront side. Let me see who else that might want to walk. You want to go on one with me, Dan, or Melissa?
Sure.
Sure, I'll do it. That's the place with 2 houses there on the corner inside of the turn.
Yeah. You want to do that?
That's the Chris Sterling and Tish Moreno's.
Exactly, that place.
Live there. I'm very familiar with
Melissa, Dan and I'll do that. Is that okay?
Okay.
Or do you want to do it, Melissa? And I'll step back.
Sure.
Okay.
If it's got a paved road that I can get to it on in my little sports car.
It's Highway 1, hon.
It's Highway 1. That's a tough location there. You'd have to walk a little ways. Anyway, let's put down Dan and I, and well, Dan and Melissa, and I'll step in if needed. Okay.
I need someone to send me an email about this so that I can find the address.
Okay. We'll have to do that. You know, if we don't get these totally handled on the February meeting because it's such a short notice, that's not so bad. But okay, well, we've got them assigned. Let's go from there and get.
Could I just add a note here? this would be of interest to some of the new council members. I think you know this, Robert, and you know more about it than I do. I did some research on why that was happening, that they'd show up on the website and we wouldn't get a notice in the mail. Okay. There's a couple of factors. One is it takes a while by the time it gets on the website to get it into a letter that goes into the GMAC. But the more serious reason was there is a lot of new people in the planning department. Right. And some of them don't know they're supposed to be working with the MACs around the county. And they haven't been referring these things. And I heard this from a senior member of the planning department who was a little bit annoyed by it, but didn't know what she could do about it. And she was trying to figure it out and figured over time they'll figure it out. I think it's really important when these things come up to stay on top of them, contact the planner who is named on the application and say, hey, are you doing this? Is this something that you need input from our community on? And do that. And the reason I think Dan might be interested as treasurer now is, if I remember, Robert, there is some allocation of funding to GMAC as a result of us looking into these things. Is that correct?
$80 for CDP.
Yeah.
But that kind of went by the wayside. And now they just kind of allocate a lump sum figure to the max, from what I recall.
Well, maybe Dan can look into that as one of his first official duties.
Something to research.
That's money that we could use for other projects in Gualala, which would be nice to get some of that tax money back into the community.
Yeah, we never really saw
it. $70 per CDP.
What do you say?
That was 60 or 70 bucks. I don't recall. That was like 10 or 12 years ago. And then they said, okay, we're going to give you $3,333.33, and that's it.
Right.
That was a very arbitrary sum.
That's what I recall. Yeah. And now we just submit them invoices and they just pay them. So, and we submit your invoice, Mary, and they are supposed to pay them. So it's changed quite a bit over the years. So anyway, let's follow up on these CDPs, those that have these different ones, and they're not all that difficult, these four. So if you have any questions, we'll all get together and check with a planner like Tom was suggesting and see what's needed. Okay, council members' comments. Do we have any additional comments from anybody about anything on the agenda?
I have one.
Okay.
On the next Board of Supervisors agenda under the consent calendar, GMAC will be getting a new member.
Okay.
David Spock is on the consent calendar to be added as our newest member. So.
Hey.
Another well-known local voice. All right.
So we will have a full house.
A full complement. That's great.
I think still here.
I think Dave will be.
No, he left.
No, he's wisely signed off.
Surprise,
well,
surprise.
That's great news.
Yes.
Yeah. Full house. Okay. Thanks for that news, Kevin. Any other member comments? Then we will move on to Administrative Secretary Mobert's report.
Yes, sr. I worked 18.68 hours in December. Materials were $31.43. That included the 2023 filing materials, starting all the new files and all of the new notebooks, for a total of $358.04. This month, I paid the P.O. box rent so that we wouldn't be missing out on anything because of the power going down and all the rest of it. It came right as the power was down. So I handed in that $66, and it will be included in my January statement.
Okay.
But I wanted to tell you ahead of time that I didn't know whether the county would be able to pay this because of all the power going down, and I didn't know whether Ukiah was out or not. And I just thought, I'll do this, and then it will be paid. and the mail will come.
Great, and you've got a
So
receipt for that too? We've both done that over the years. I know that, Mary. So we'll get you reimbursed on that.
They have yet to put a receipt in the box, but I will definitely have a receipt. And I do have the piece of paper that came with it that said, you know, please pay the box rent. And I wrote down my check number and the date that I paid it. I think I paid it on the 5th.
Okay.
Which is the day that one day after the power went down.
Well, bless your heart for doing that. I'm glad you did it. Keep our mail coming. And I'll go over that with Dan when we meet, okay?
Good deal. Thank you, Mary.
Robert, I have one other thing.
Okay.
If I can, just a reminder to the council members that on Wednesday, January 25th, from 9 to 11 is the Brown Act training.
That's the 25th, huh?
5th.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, Wednesday
good point.
the 25th.
And where is that going to be?
I have the feeling it's going to be a Zoom, virtual.
Oh, that's
training.
right. Virtual. Okay.
Yeah, Microsoft Teams. They're supposed to send out a link. They said tomorrow or Monday, and it's just an email. You email somebody. She emailed me back like 10 minutes later to say that I was on the list. So I can put. I don't know. We got that email from. I think Mary sent that along a little while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got a confirmation from the county council's administrative aide.
Yeah, and I signed up for it today, so at
good.
least today was not too late.
Okay, so if we've already attended that training, we don't have to do this one. Is that correct?
I think it's supposed to
they do it.
They do it annual.
Yeah, they do it annually.
But we all received that email, right? I just have to look for it.
Yes.
Yes, I sent that email immediately when I got it that day out to everyone.
Okay, good.
I can. I had it pulled up earlier today, so I can bump it back up in people's inboxes.
That'd be good, because I don't know where mine is
it was
either.
December sometime, late December. I don't
December,
remember exactly when.
It was December 20th. And I will. I'll just reply to everybody, so it gets bumped up in everybody's email.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, before we lose Melissa completely, can we get to number 10? Are we done with Mary's report?
Yes,
Mary?
sir.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Melissa, you've got the floor. Can we have a motion to?
It won't be a very vigorous motion, but I make a quiet, sleepy motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
I'd also like to make a motion that we meet at the same time that our dear Board of Supervisors doesn't start our meetings at 2 in the afternoon.
Well, we can't do that, but we can sure do a motion to adjourn at the moment. Anybody want to second Melissa's motion?
Robert's rule says it's always in order.
Okay, it's always in order, yeah. Okay, Dan seconds that. Melissa.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Dan.
Aye, indeed.
All right. Henry.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
And Robert. Aye. Okay, you guys. Thanks so much for
like they said in the first TV show.
Getting together on the postponed meeting. Okay. And thank you.
Good meeting, everybody.
Good to hear from you.
Thank you all for your good work.
Thank you so much for attending. Thanks, David, and welcome if he's still there.